Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto What If Hub 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Was Forgotten? Lost Sakura, Anko and Kushina Part 2. Naruto and his girls finally meeting for the first time. Question is, how will the girls react when they finally see him, and how will he react? Furthermore, how will Sakura and Anko react to these unidentified girls start to try and get close to our favorite blonde? One thing is for sure, jealousy will be abound. Mostly from Sakura, Anko will merely be amused. So anyways, last chapter we saw implications of Kakashi moving along with his plan to nudge Sakura and Naruto together, though both had seemed to notice that this was something beyond mere team building exercises. Especially with Kurama pointing out the very likely possibility that his teammate has become a pawn for the old bastard. We also got to see Ino corner Sakura about her constant time hanging out with Naruto instead of obsessing over Sasuke. Which of course lead to our little mind walker learning about Naruto. With Sakura steering her around to show key memories. So while Ino knows that Naruto is called a demon and such, she is still unaware of the Kyuubi sealed within him, as Sakura had omitted that out of her memory tour. Not to mention, a bit of a hint that our little cherry blossom has developed a crush on our favorite blonde, now that she has actually gotten to know him and got away from Sasuke. And then, we got to my own personal favorite part. Naruto and Anko interacting, and of course kissing. Not to mention, she is the one to give Naruto the idea to escape during the Chunin exams, though she is unaware of the invasion plan. She just knows that it will be crowded and hectic with foreigners constantly entering and leaving the village. So, we will get to see a bit more of how they plan to leave in this chapter. Lastly, we got to see Kushina's own spymaster that makes Jiraiya look like an amateur, none other than Corvo Atano. With knowledge well beforehand of Orochimaru's plans to invade Konoha, she plans to use the invasion as a distraction for Corvo to complete his mission. Which I am sure everyone knows what it is by now. Hiruzen's Little Black Book. Review Corner. Unsen Musho. Ino will become a friend, yes. Though, she will not develop a crush on him like Sakura has. Antex the legendary Zoroark. Yes, Kushina will be using the invasion as a distraction for Corvo to accomplish his own mission. Which is simply to raid the Hokage's office and find anything of note that looks important. Lovely lover, for the most part, Hiruzen has kept Kushina and her shinobi out of Konoha with comforting lies that they have not given up the search and that his shinobi are looking for signs of Naruto whenever they go out on a mission. While at the same time, planting small seeds of doubt that Naruto could be dead by now. He never intended to use the Kyuubi's power until Naruto was fully broken, and as stated, his first target would be Kushina's village to remove a potential threat to them in the future. So that is pretty much what the old goat was planning. To be fair, it would have worked if Kairi and the others didn't sense Kurama's chakra signature. Nays 151. There have been a few hints of how strong Barugakure is compared to the other villages. The most obvious was stating that while the girls are already Chunin rank, their strength and skill are more close to that of a Jonin and Anbu. Also, when the girls met with Tazuna when they investigated Wave, the old bridge builder has thoughts that he would have hired their village instead, due to their strength. As for the village itself, Barugakure is more technologically advanced than even Snow Country. So think of it kind of like Esther from Final Fantasy VIII. I will go more into the village when Naruto returns there. And fear not, you will get to see how strong the girls are in the exams. Pei 0505 Corvo's relationship to Naruto can be seen as he is more of an uncle. The spymaster has great respect and love for Kushina and her family, and no, he is not with Kushina. Corvo has his own wife. KHOR30CAT. Yes, Corvo is from Dishonored, one of my favorite game franchises. Praetorkson. Sadly, Uzu is no more. It got obliterated during the Second Shinobi War. There will be more on that later. Especially after a certain little black book comes to light. But, most of those that lived there had managed to escape to Barugakure. As for the girls, that was part of the reason I introduced them in the harem list like I did. So even those unfamiliar with the franchise can get a good visualization on them, as well as mapping out some of their characteristics. Harem, Anko, Aqua, Esdeath, Kairi, Koyuki, Morgiana, Pyrrha, Rory, Sakura, and Xian. Now then, on with the show. Remember me. Chapter 6. Naruto was not in the best of moods currently. Just hours ago, the old bastard had made a surprise visit to his apartment, forcing the young blonde to dispel his blood clone. As the old man had made a habit of walking around the young teen's apartment, in the guise of having a grandfatherly talk with the boy. Though Naruto had caught on what the bastard was really doing. Making a mental list of anything deemed too nice for the weapon to own. It was no coincidence that shortly after one of this surprise visits from the old man, that his apartment would get broken into and vandalized. Oftentimes with some of his more treasured items being stolen or destroyed. He had originally had his suspicions before the wave mission, though the loyalty seal that had been placed on him had prevented him from accusing the elderly man of doing such a thing. Fortunately, he begun to stash what few precious items he had in a secure spot away from his apartment, prior to his mission in Wave. Not that it was much. Only a few gifts that had been given to him by his few precious people. Looking back, he was extremely grateful that he never removed his most precious of items, his necklace. Thanks to seals that had been placed there by his mother, making it so that even if the necklace were to somehow be removed, he would return right back to him within seconds. No doubt, that was one item the old bastard desperately wanted to remove from the boy's possession. He could feel it every time Hiruzen glanced at the necklace. Simply because the necklace gave the boy a sense of individuality. Unfortunately, the elder man had taken much longer than usual with his visit. No doubt double-checking the blonde seals discreetly as he made small talk. By the time the Hokage had left the apartment, Naruto was already running behind, forcing him to rush to meet with his team for the day. As such, he was unable to recreate his blood clone before he ran out the door, since creating such a clone required at least half an hour to complete. Meaning that until he could safely recreate a blood clone, he was vulnerable to the old bastard's spying. Of course he knew he would still be arriving early to the training ground, due to Kakashi's constant habit of being late, which would have given him time to complete the clone, but it would also attract unwanted attention on himself if he didn't continue on as normal. Thus, putting him in between a rock and a hard place. Finally reaching his team's training ground, Naruto let out a tired yawn and settled himself against one of the training posts. He figured he would have at least another half hour before Sakura showed up, and then another 15 minutes for Sasuke to arrive. Then finally, another 2.5 hours before the bastard of a sensei and his kidnapper would grace them with his appearance. As he waited for the rest of his team to arrive, Naruto began to think back about his talk with Anko yesterday. After the impromptu make-out session that the snake mistress had initiated, not that he minded, he had told her everything there was about him. Feeling that if she was going to leave the village with him, she should know everything. From his earlier years in Barugakure, his tenant, and of course, his engagement to the 5 girls. He had expected her to be upset at him for not telling her before she kissed him, but to his surprise, she merely teased him about having his own little harem. Which had caused him to scowl slightly. He really didn't like the word harem, as it implied that those involved with him had no free will and were merely there for his own pleasure. Instead, he informed the snake mistress that he preferred to see it as his own growing family. Something the snake mistress had found endearing. Afterwards, they had begun discussing their plans to leave the village. Anko had informed him that the best time would be during the second phase of the Chunin exams, otherwise known as the finals. As it was customary for there to be some preliminary rounds to further weed out the participants, as well as a month-long break between the preliminaries and the finals. Anko had explained that this was to allow the finalists to train themselves further to give them an edge of their opponent, and second, the month-long break was there to allow foreigner dignitaries to arrive to witness the final matches. With all the people coming and going, it would be the best time for the two of them to sneak out of the village and get a good head start towards Barugakure. Unknown to both of them, a rescue mission was in progress to get him out of the village. "Morning, Naruto-kun." A feminine voice broke the blonde out of his musings. "Morning, Sakura-chan." The blonde greeted, though was surprised at her use of the kun suffix with his name. Sakura had also seemed to notice this and blushed slightly. A little bit embarrassed. Not to mention, what Ino had pointed out the previous day had only brought forth what she did not want to admit, at least not yet. That she now had a crush on the blonde. Which was really awkward for her, since his crush on her died in wave, only for her to develop one for him. "I give it 15 more minutes before Sasuke-tem arrives," Naruto noted as he stood up and stretched, allowing a series of pops and cracks to be heard. Then another 2.5 hours before Kakashi-sensei to show up. Sure enough, nearly 15 minutes alter, Sasuke arrived on the training field. Being his usual brooding self. Opting to sit away from his other two teammates. Though he eyed the two suspiciously, trying to figure out what the two seemed different. The last Uchiha couldn't put his finger on it, but over the last month both Sakura and Naruto had subtly changed. Sakura now seemed to have more energy and actually begun to take her career as a kunoichi seriously. Not even pestering him for a single date in an entire month. If anything, aside from a standard greeting, she ignored him. Making Sasuke feel a bit conflicted. On one hand, he was relieved that she had begun to take her training more seriously. On the other, his days felt a little empty without her constant request for a date. Still, such emotions would only distract him from his goal to avenge his clan. As for Naruto, the Uchiha didn't know, but he felt as if his blonde teammate was hiding something. Not just from him, but from everyone in the village. The boy's posture gave the raven-haired boy the distinct feeling that the blonde was way more aware of his surroundings than he let on. Not to mention, there were times it would appear the blonde would zone out, as if he was listening to something or something else. Then there was the fact that both Sakura and the blonde were becoming close to one another and constantly hanging out or training together in their spare time. Still, as long as they didn't get in his way or slow him down, he didn't care what they did. As the three genin settled into their own activities with Naruto and Sakura quietly conversing with one another and Sasuke brooding by himself, time slowly ticked by. Eventually, after what seemed like an eternity had passed, the 2.5-hour mark came, and went with no sign of their sensei. "Well, looks like your timing is off," Sakura teased, though internally she was becoming frustrated that their sensei had yet to appear as it was starting to near the 4-hour mark, and still no sign of the lazy Jonin. Something probably came up, you know how he is." The blonde shrugged as he glanced in the direction of the Hokage's tower. "Probably the beginning of the Chunin exams that Anko-chan told us about. She did say that it was starting this week, after she finished probing your tonsils." Kurama voiced his opinion with a laugh, causing his host to blush at the memory. Arrow Fox. Hokage's tower. I, Kurenai Yuhi, nominate my team of Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame for the Chunin exams. A red-eyed beauty stated with confidence. I, Konoha's sublime green beast of prey, Maida Guy, nominate my youthful team of Tenten Higurashi, Neji Hyuga, and my most youthful student, Rock Lee, for the Chunin exams. A large, well-built man in a green jumpsuit proudly exclaimed, earning a series of sweat drops from his peers. I, Asuma Sarutobi, nominate my team of Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akamichi for the Chunin exams. The bearded man calmly stated, taking a drag from the cigarette that was in his mouth. Nodding at the Jonin sensei's nomination of their respected teams in front of him, Hiruzen turned his attention to the last remaining sensei, who of course had his nose stuck in his favorite orange book. "And what about your team, Kakashi?" Looking up from his book in a lazy manner, the masked Jonin let out a small sigh. I nominate my team for the Chunin exams. He replied lazily as he turned his attention back to his book, without a care in the world. Foregoing the usual standard introduction of the team members that the other senseis had done before him. Very well, the Hokage stated as he rose from his desk, a small pile of papers in his hands that he begun to hand out to the Jonin senseis before him. Give these to your teams, have them fill them out and turn them in before the end of the day. With a vocal affirmation, the three other senseis departed the office, leaving behind Kakashi, who finally put his book away. Are you sure your team is ready? Hiruzen eyed the masked Jonin skeptically. Should the boy die, we will lose our weapon. All he has to do is survive the first half of the exam. Kakashi stated calmly. Which, with the help of his team, he will see to it that he does. The elder man stated in a cold tone. I will not have our weapon lost before we can use it. Also, the silver-haired man begun. The Forest of Death portion of the test would be the perfect time for the Haruno girl to have an accident. Do you feel that the two of them have bonded enough? While they are not intimate, she never leaves his side. Kakashi pointed out. Anbu could handle it easily enough. No. The elder man shot down the idea. We can't risk her surviving or worse, the weapon witnessing on of our own killing her. It would be best if one of the other genin teams were to remove her. At this, the old man had an idea. I'll talk to Danzo, and see if he can spare a team of disposable root members. The Hokage stated. They kill the girl, and the weapon kills again. For now, go and give your team their papers. As you wish, Hokage-sama. Kakashi bowed before leaving the elder man to his thoughts. Hopefully this will be the final push to break the boy's mind. Training Ground 7. Frustrated. That would be the best way to describe the trio that made up Team 7. They had been waiting for almost 5 hours now, and still, there was no sign of their sensei. At this point, for the first time since the team's creation, all three agreed on one thing. Kakashi Hatake would be late to his own funeral. Though if it were up to Naruto, the bastard wouldn't even be given a proper burial. Yo! A plume of smoke erupted from the top of the training pole that Sasuke had decided to lean against. Sorry I'm late. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around. But then I was forced into a hand-walk race with a one-armed yeti. All three of the genins couldn't help but to sweat drop at the masked mon's excuse this time. It was by far the most outlandish one to date. So what are we doing today, Kakashi-sensei? The blonde asked with genuine interest. Any new missions? Actually no. The man replied with an eye smile. I nominated you three for the Chunin exams. Jumping down off the post, he handed each of his students the slip of paper he had been given to allow them to enter the exams. Fill these out and have them turned in immediately. Without giving any real instruction, he disappeared in another poof of smoke, leaving behind three bewildered genins. Well, I don't know about you two, but I am definitely entering. Naruto stated with a fox-like grin, earning a small smirk from the Uchiha. See you there, Dobi. Sasuke stated with a smirk as he shoved the paper into his pocket and left the training field. Are you sure about this, Naruto? Sakura inquired, clearly worried. Of course I am, Sakura-chan. He exclaimed, giving her a reassuring smile. We're strong enough to handle this. I can't let some test scare me if I am going to be Hokage someday. Though despite saying this, Naruto was worried on the inside. Knowing that the masked bastard was behind his kidnapping, he wasn't expecting him to actually nominate them for the exams. Hell, he was fully expected the pervert to come up with some bullshit excuse as to why they wouldn't be able to participate in the exams. Still, if he backed out now, it would only bring scrutiny down upon him and jeopardize his chance to escape the village. Well, I am going to go fill my slip out and turn it in. Naruto stated to the Pinkett. Just know, Sakura-chan, that if you don't think you are ready for it, I will not think any less of you. Receiving a nod from the pink-haired girl, the blonde set off to submit himself into the exams. No, I cannot let Naruto-kun down. Sakura thought to herself. We are ready for this. Let's show them. Cha. Konoha Gates, 2 hours later. As late afternoon hung over the village, 6 figures made their way towards the massive gates. A flurry of emotions swirling between all of them. A mixture of excitement, anxiety, and a small trace of fear. At the head of the group was Kairi. The young redhead was eager to see her fiancé for the first time in 7 years, despite Aqua reminding her to keep her expectations tempered, and to be emotionally prepared for anything. So what's the plan, Nagato-sensei? Xian inquired, shifting the weight of the massive blade she now carried on her back. Should we ask around and look for Naruto-kun right away or? No, do not ask about him, answered the red-haired man that was acting as their Jonin-sensei for the exams. We know that Hitaki kidnapped him, no doubt under the Hokage's orders. If you were to ask around for him, it would alert them to our true purpose. Xian nodded in response, though like her red-headed friend, she was also anxious to see him again. It was the feeling of being so close, yet so far away at the same time. I don't know about you guys, but I am starving. Morgiana pipped in as a small grumbling noise could be heard from her stomach, causing her to blush in embarrassment and eliciting a round of giggles from the others. When we arrive in Konoha, you all get our hotel rooms. Aqua, the true leader of the mission stated. I will stop at the ramen stand that Kushina-sama had recommended we try before we left. What if we see Naruto-kun? Rory asked, prompting the blue-haired girl in front of them to stop abruptly and turn towards the group that also stopped. If you see him, approach him with caution. The young blue-haired woman stated calmly. We don't know how he will react, nor do we know how closely he is being watched over. If you can talk with him, be subtle and assess the situation. Understood, Aqua-chan, the halberd-wielding beauty replied. Also, as tempting as it is, do not attack any of the Konoha shinobi unless attacked first. The blue-haired woman continued. Keep in mind, there may be innocents. Both Morgiana and Rory adopted a scowl on their faces. The two of them really wanted to dish out some personal justice to the village, but their future sister-wife had a point. Short of those involved blatantly advertising it, there would be no way to tell who was innocent and who was not in the kidnapping of their beloved. Also mind your emotions for anyone who may speak out against young Naruto. Nagato pointed out. As you know, only Kumogakure and Barugakure are the only 2 hidden villages that treat their Jinchuriki with respect. Do you think his status as a Jinchuriki was leaked to the public? Kairi asked in a worried tone. I wouldn't put it past the old man. The red-haired male sighed. It's common practice to abuse the Jinchuriki both mentally and physically in most villages to mentally condition them. Though from what you give had reported from Wave, it seems he hasn't been broken yet. Which is good. Let's hurry then, and bring our beloved home. Xian stated, earning nods of agreement. Another 20 minutes saw that at the gates of the village. Quickly signing in with the 2 Chunin that were on gate duty, the Barugakure group entered the village of Konoha. Sticking to the plan, Aqua split off from the group to acquire some ramen, while the other group made their way towards the hotel to reserve the rooms for the duration of the exams. Each of their eyes sharp, looking for any trace of their lost loved one. While Aqua went off to get the food, the rest of the Barugakure group continued on towards the Sleepy Willow Inn, an extravagant premier hotel within Konoha. Earning some curious looks from the various villagers, and some of the shinobi, as Barugakure shinobi were rarely seen within Konoha. As they approached the hotel, the group was approached by 3 genins from Konoha. One with a dark pair of sunglasses hiding his eyes, while a large coat covered the lower half of his face. Beside him was a shy-looking girl with pearly white eyes and lavender-colored hair. The last was a feral-looking boy with a white puppy on his head, 2 red upside-down triangles adorning his face. Damn, you look good. The feral boy stated as his team approached the group, all while eyeing Morgiana up and down, causing her to narrow her eyes slightly. Kiba-san, please do not harass our guests. The boy in the large coat said in a monotone voice, before turning his attention towards the group as a whole. If I am to guess, you are here for the Chunin exams. That is correct, Xian replied, though her tone held a cold edge to it. Forgive me, my name is Shino Aburame. The boy now identified as Shino introduced himself before gesturing to his two teammates. And this is Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba Inuzuka. Pleased to meet you. Kairi gave a small bow. My name is Kairi, and these are Xian, Rory, Morgiana, and our sensei, Nagato. As was with the introduction of the only male in the group, did the members of Team 8 notice the taller, red-haired man. His piercing blue eyes focusing in on the three of them, making it feel as if he were gazing into their very soul. Shaking off his shock, Kiba turned his attention back towards the pink-haired girl. So, Morgiana-chan, he grinned. How would you like to go on a date with a true alpha? At this, the girl in question leveled a cold glare at the boy. Not interested, she merely replied with a scoff. Ah, come on, don't be like that. The boy persisted, much to the annoyance of the rest of the girls, and the embarrassment of his own team. I'm sure once you see just how much of an alpha I am, you'll fall for me. Not likely, mutt, Morgiana growled out, as the boy was getting on her nerves. And I will have you know, I am already engaged to someone. Really? Who is it? Kiba all but demanded, a growl in his voice that someone dare lay claim on what he perceived as his. I'll beat him down and then make you submit to me. At this, all of the girls cast a dark glare at the boy. The fact that he had the audacity to threaten their beloved had angered them. Even more so, was the fact that the boy showed he cared nothing for loyalty and integrity and no doubt, viewed women as only trophies. So is this how Konoha shinobi view loyalty and commitment? Xian inquired, turning towards the feral boy, a cold look in her golden eyes. If so, perhaps our village should reevaluate our alliance. Kiba-kun, you're making our village look bad. Spoke the shy Hyuga girl in a soft voice. Please forgive our teammate, we believe his sister dropped him on his head when he was an infant. Shino stated in his monotone voice, though earned a few curious looks from his teammates that the normally all-serious Aburama had cracked a joke at his teammates' expense. We hope you enjoy your stay in our village. Hinata bowed. Yeah, I'll be seeing you later. Kiba said, not taking his eyes off Morgiana. I swear, that mud better pray to Kami we don't get matched up against each other. Morgiana growled, clenching her fist tightly. Because so help me if we do, he is not walking away whole. I have to say Xian-san, you handled that rather well. Nagato commented, calling into question their stance on loyalty and integrity. He then turned towards the pink-haired Kunoichi. And I am proud of you as well, Morgiana-san. You restrained yourself well, when faced with the boy's arrogance. Thank you, Nagato-sensei. The two girls smiled. Now, let us be off. Naruto. It had been non-stop all afternoon for the young blonde. As decided, he had immediately filled out his sheet and entered himself into the Chunin exams, ignoring the glare the receptionist gave him when he turned in his paper. Then he had stopped off to visit Anko, whom was none too pleased that he had entered the exams. It had taken some time to calm her down, as well as a few kisses, but in the end, she relented. It would seem out of character for him to not attempt to pass the exams. Having calmed the snake mistress, Naruto now found himself seated at his favorite place, with a hot bowl of ramen in front of him. Probably the only thing in the village he would miss when him and Anko finally escaped this cesspool, but then again, no matter how good Ichiraku's was, it still didn't compare to his mother's home cooking. However, he froze mid-bite as he sensed someone. Cautiously, he turned his head just slightly to see out of the corner of his eye, the blue-haired beauty whom was frozen in place behind him. She's here. If she's here, then the others are probably with her. What do? I can't talk openly with her. He mentally exclaimed, cursing himself for not taking the time to recreate his blood clone. Knowing that a squad of Anbu was observing him now. Though he didn't recognize the chakra signatures. Calm down kid and think. Kurama stated as Beast pondered the situation. What about that game you and the girls played during your preliminary school days, when you would send each other secret messages? Game. Secret messages. Naruto's eyes suddenly widened in realization. That's it. I suggest a late-night meeting in Training Ground 44, since no one ever goes there except for Anko. Right. Doing what he could to calm himself, Naruto took another bite from his ramen and waited for his blue-haired goddess to approach the stand. It was clear that she recognized him. He didn't have to wait long. As the young woman entered the stand, took a seat next to him. Welcome to Ichiraku's, what can I get you? Ayame asked the new arrival with her usual cheer. 6 large miso ramen to go please. Aqua politely ordered, prompting the young waitress to disappear back into the kitchen, leaving the two alone. First time here? Naruto asked, striking up a conversation with the blue-haired beauty. All the while, tapping his finger on the counter with his left hand. Aqua narrowed her eyes slightly in thought as he listened to the rhythm of the taps. Racking her memory before she realized what he was doing. It was obvious her blonde beloved was under scrutiny from the village, so he was giving her a message in code. Training Ground 44, midnight. Yes, my team and I are here for the Chunin exams. Aqua answered, while also tapping her finger in another series of taps. Understood. I'm in the exams too. Naruto smiled, causing her heart to melt. To finally be able to see his radiant smile after so many years of being without it. Here you go, that'll be 6,000 ryo. Ayame informed the blue-haired young woman. Nodding, Aqua dug into her pouch only to be stopped by Naruto. Subtly giving her a wink, causing the normally stoic woman to blush lightly. Here, let me take care of that for you. He stated as he brought out his own wallet and paid for her food. Thank you, Naruto Uzumaki. Thank you again, Naruto-san. She almost slipped up. I hope to see you in the exams. Nodding, Naruto turned back to his meal as Aqua departed the ramen stand with an invigorated pace to return to the hotel and tell the others the good news. Oh sure, now they'll leave. Naruto mentally grumbled as he felt the chakra signatures of the Anbu that had been watching him fade away. Aqua. The young brunette wasted no time in returning to the hotel that the other girls were residing. Locking onto their chakra signatures, she quickly used her frost shunshin and appeared inside the room the give girls would be sharing, whereas Nagato had taken a room for himself. Calming herself, she set the food on the table and took a deep breath to try and calm her emotions, which failed as she let out an excited squeal that attracted everyone's attention. Aqua-chan, are you alright? Kairi inquired as she entered the kitchen area with the others. Each sporting a confused and curious look, as the blue-haired teen hardly ever let her emotions get the best of her. Well, she smiled. I ran into Naruto-kun in the ramen stand. As soon as his name left her mouth, the others were immediately upon her. Asking what he looked like, if he remembered them, and above all, if he was alright. Yes, he remembers us, but he is being monitored. She sadly explained. But he will be in the exams. So, we don't get to see him until tomorrow afternoon then? Xian asked, sadness in her voice. No, Aqua answered with a smile. We are to meet with him tonight at midnight in Training Ground 44. Hearing this, all of the girls seemed to brighten up. The thought of finally being able to reunite with their beloved greatly lifting their spirits. Giving them hope that everything was going to be alright. Be sure to inform Nagato-sensei. Aqua reminded them, mostly so the elder Uzumaki man didn't need to worry about them. 8 hours later, after the encounter with Aqua at the ramen stand, Naruto had wasted no time in returning to his apartment and recreating his blood clone. That old bastard be damned, he was not going to miss the chance to reconnect with his girls. Now, he found himself pacing back and forth in the middle of the Forest of Death, otherwise known as Training Ground 44. This of course was getting on the Kyuubi's nerves, but he kept quiet. Kurama understood how his host felt, and pitied him. Suddenly, He froze as he felt 5 very familiar and very warm chakra signatures a short distance behind him. Slowly turning, he saw his girls. A look of worry and relief etched in all of their faces. Seeing them again, tears formed in his eyes, unable to hold back his emotions that were surging within him. Facing them, he made one step forward before he was tackled to the ground by a crying redhead. Instinctively, he wrapped his arms around the crying form of Kairi and embraced her with a firm hug. Almost as if he was afraid she would disappear if he let go. "It's really you," Kairi cried into his chest, before leaning up and giving him a full kiss on the mouth. One he gladly returned. By now the others had gathered around their blonde beloved, each embracing them in their own hugs and kisses after Kairi and reluctantly relinquished him from her grip. "What happened, Naruto-kun?" Rory asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you try and contact us?" Letting out a sigh, the young blonde sat down on a fallen log, prompting the girls to do the same. "Guess I better start from the beginning," he stated. Additional author's notes. And that's a wrap. Naruto has finally reunited with his girls in an emotional reunion. I was playing with the idea of having Hiruzen spy on Naruto when he interacts with Aqua, but I kind of wanted for it to be a surprise for him when he realizes the girls from Barugakure are also in the exams. Also making it so that it is too late for him to pull Naruto from it. So, I had some Root Anbu watch over him instead, which fits I think. Especially with what Hiruzen is planning. Also, we got to see Kiba be, well, Kiba. Bad news for him that he focused on Morgiana. And for those of you wondering, yes. He will end up facing her in the preliminaries. Why? Because I am evil like that. As for Hinata, while she is still shy, due to Naruto not being in the village until after he was 7, she does not have the same crush on him as she normally would. Though she is still inspired by his determination to not give up, and respects his inner strength. If that makes sense. Author's notes. Kind of funny that both of my Naruto stories are entering the Chunin exams at the same time. Anyways, last chapter the girls finally made it to Konoha, with poor Morgiana having to deal with Kiba and his, "I'm an alpha, and you will submit to me," attitude. Though it did allow Xian to get a jab in at how their village views loyalty and commitment. Not to mention the initial meeting between Naruto and Aqua, and their coded message to one another, which lead to the final reunion between Naruto and his girls. We also got to see more of Hiruzen's plot to further torment Naruto, with his latest plan of targeting Sakura during the second phase of the exams in hopes of mentally breaking Naruto. Now, as for the blood clone. I knew that I wanted Naruto to use a blood clone to act as a decoy, but I also didn't want to make it so that he could simply create one on the spot. So, opted for a ritual of sorts to create a blood clone that requires knowledge and understanding of Fuinjutsu. In which Naruto would have to create an array of seals in a circle on the floor, with himself and the blood in the very center. The amount of blood used is roughly 50 milliliters, give or take. Not too much, but at the same time, not something he can just do with reckless abandon. Of course, the time-consuming part comes from chakra being added to the blood to allow it to form into the actual blood clone. Especially for Naruto, since he has to combine his own chakra and Kurama's chakra at the same time. So there you have it, for those of you who were curious as to my use of the blood clone technique. Review Corner. Hyper A 2019 Hiruzen won't die, but I do have something planned for him, and the others involved with Naruto's kidnapping. Unlimited fic works. Yes, Emily is around. I wanted her in the harem early on, but she didn't get enough votes, sadly. Though she will make an appearance in future chapters as one of the girl's friends. Antex the legendary Zoroark. Spoiler alert, Kiba is going to get paired up against Morgiana during the preliminaries. And it is going to be a one-sided fight. As already stated, the girls are well above mere genin. Ronin the accuser. No, Orochimaru is on his own side. Kushina is just using his invasion as a distraction to have her own missions carried out. One of course being the extraction of her son, and the second being the special mission she had assigned Corvo. Pei 0505 Yup, the same Nagato. While they are not active, he does have the Rinnegan still. We'll see a bit more of him during the exams. Though for obvious reasons, he will not like Kakashi. Jinto Lin. I love that part as well. I figured Aqua would be the best choice to be the first to run into Naruto, since she is more in control of her emotions. Though as seen, she does have her limits when she squealed like a schoolgirl once she arrived back at the hotel. For Aqua's near slip-up, no one of note to worry about noticed. As for Sakura, fear not. Naruto will protect her, and now that he is no longer being hindered by seals, his skills are more than enough to handle a few rookie root members. Kiba will survive, but he may have a sudden fear of the color pink for a while after the match. Romance breeding and story artist, guest reviewers, both of you make a fair point that there is a lack of representation of dark-skinned girls in the harem, and even in the series. I will see what I can do to remedy this by the next chapter. Gears Creed. I have no current plans to add scenes to this particular story. As stated, should that happen, I will make the proper changes. Harem, Anko, Aqua, Esdeath, Kairi, Koyuki, Morgiana, Pyrrha, Rory, Sakura, and Xian. Now then, on with the show. Remember me. Chapter 7. All 5 of the girls silently seethed in anger and disgust as their blonde lover had finished his tale of what had exactly happened on his end. How he had 2 seals placed upon him that blocked his memories and made him loyal to only the Hokage, and by extension, Konoha. Though each silently thankful that Kurama's chakra had finally managed to break the seals that had kept their love subdued. What even infuriated them further was how the old bastard had allowed the village to treat Naruto. Everything from the beatings to being sabotaged in his schooling. Even further, when the girls learned that Hiruzen had lied to Naruto about his parents, playing them off as some poor civilians that died during the Kyuubi attack. Which begged the question, why did Hiruzen allow Naruto to keep his name? From what both Kurama and Naruto could determine, it was simply because his Uzumaki blood would not allow him to forget his proud heritage. While the memory seal worked to make him forget his mother and those close to him, he always remembered his name. The young blonde had recalled when Hiruzen had attempted to have him be named Menma, only for Naruto to correct him every time that his name was Naruto, not Menma. After a few days, the elder Hokage had given up on changing the Jinchuriki's name and came up with a bullshit cover story that he had given the orphan boy the name of Kushina, missing son, in honor of the lost boy. If only just to ward off any suspicions from Kushina's close friends that still resided within the village. The civilian families ate it up, as did most of the shinobi clan heads, with only Sume of the Inuzuka clan showing any signs of suspicion. If the feral woman did suspect anything, she kept it to herself. And that's pretty much it. Naruto finished with a sigh. Wait, did that old bastard really try to change your name to Menma? Rory inquired with a sneer. Yeah, the blonde teenage boy sighed. Son of a bitch wanted to completely erase my identity. There was also several times he tried to take my necklace from me, though thanks to the seals Ka-chan put on it, it never worked. Speaking of which. Naruto frowned in confusion. Why are you girls here? Not that I am complaining. This of course earned a round of giggles from the girls. Well, after we felt Kurama-sama's chakra signature, Kushina-sama speculated that it came from Wave Country and sent us to investigate it. Aqua began with a soft smile, as it was the day that hope reignited in all of them. Explains why Xian-chan has Zabuza's old sword. Kurama commented, earning a mental nod from the blonde. We missed you by a week. Kairi commented sadly. Sorry. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. But it's okay now. The red-haired girl smiled and latched onto the blonde. After we learned you were here, Kushina-sama sent us here to bring you back home. We can leave tomorrow. At this, all of the other girls agreed. However, it didn't go unnoticed that Naruto didn't show the same excitement. Slowly, the blonde shook his head with a sigh, though before the girls could ask him why, he turned his head and looked at a nearby tree. You can come out now, Anko-chan. He called out, much to the confusion of the girls. After a few seconds of silence, the lithe form of Konoha's snake mistress came into view as she stepped out from behind the tree that Naruto had been looking at. A mixture of surprise, concern, and a bit of sadness evident on her face as she slowly approached the group. While she knew of the girls and Naruto's connection to them, she was still surprised to see all 5 of them here within the village. Especially hearing that they were here specifically to find him, and bring him back home. This was also why the normally confident snake mistress was feeling concerned. Now that the girls from Barukagir were here, more specifically, they were here for him. Not the Chunin exams, but for Naruto himself. Despite how ludicrous it seemed, Anko felt a sense of fear fester to life within her that now that Naruto had a means to escape, he would abandon her. However, her musings were cut short when she felt a pair of arms embrace her. I know what you're thinking, hubby Haim. The blonde smiled at her. I will not abandon you. We stick to the plan. Naruto-kun, who is she? Kairi asked, with the others each looking to their blonde beloved. Ah, forgive me, Naruto stated with a small bow in apology for the lack of introductions. Ladies, this is Anko Mitarashi, she will be coming with us back to Barugakure. Anko, these are my fiancés I told you about. Hey there, Anko greeted cheerfully, though Naruto could see that it was a front that she was putting on. He knew she was scared. Scared that he would leave her, and scared that the girls would not accept her. Nice to meet you, I'm Kairi. Kairi smiled, embracing the snake mistress in a hug, much to Anko's shock. I am Aqua. The blue-haired young woman introduced herself with a smile. And on behalf of all of us, I would like to thank you for looking after Naruto-kun. It was nothing. Anko tried to wave it off as no big deal. I didn't do much actually. You did more than you can imagine, just for being there for him when we couldn't. Xian stated, before introducing herself. Name's Xian by the way. Xian-chan is right, Anko-chan. Rory commented with her own smile. I'm Rory, also known as the Reaper. Wait, you're Rory the Reaper. Anko exclaimed in shock that someone so young had earned such a reputation throughout the elemental nations. Especially since she begun to earn her alias when she was only 7. Yup. The ruby-eyed, black-haired girl giggled, scratching the back of her head sheepishly. We all took Naruto-kun's disappearance hard. Rory-chan just decided to use every bandit camp she saw to take out her frustration for an entire week. Morgiana explained just how her future sister wife got her title. By the way, I am Morgiana. Well ladies, looks like we got a new future sister wife. Aqua grinned, teasingly bopping Naruto on the head lightly, which prompted him to nervously chuckle while scratching the back of his head. Anko however was in tears. Throughout her years living in Konoha, she would have never have dreamed of being so easily accepted by the others. Not to say she didn't have any friends within the village, but their number was small. While there was no end to the people who would fake sympathy and concern all for a chance to get into her pants. Of course once they were denied, they always showed their true colors. Seeing this, the 5 girls brought the snake mistress in for a comforting hug. Each whispering their own comforting words to the young woman. So, what's this about a plan? Aqua inquired, once Anko had calmed down. Well, Anko-chan and I were already planning on leaving the village during the finales. Naruto begun to explain. As it is customary for there to be a month break in between the second phase of the exam and the finals, and with all the daimyos, cages, and other foreign visitors, it would be easier to sneak out and be long gone before anyone noticed we were missing. Especially since I am planning on leaving a blood clone behind with Kurama's chakra to throw them off the scent for a while. During the finals, Xian asked, earning a nod from the snake mistress and the blonde. That's when Orochimaru is supposed to be invading Konoha. Rory commented. At the mention of Orochimaru, Anko immediately snapped her attention to the black-haired girl. Did you say Orochimaru? Yes, he plans to invade Konoha during the final matches. Morgiana answered. Yeah, the snake bastard plans on using the Suna shinobi as cannon fodder while he holds his own shinobi back. Rory commented with a sneer. Not to mention, he will be using Suna's Jinchuriki to spearhead the attack. Naruto could see the anger rising up within the snake mistress at the mention of her former sensei's name, and that he was going to be within the village during the exams. Reaching up, he gently guided Anko's face to his own, allowing him to stare into her eyes. I know how you feel about that bastard Anko-chan. He spoke softly. But don't let your vendetta jeopardize our main goal. I promise you, hubby Heim, if he survives this invasion of his, we will track him down and kill him ourselves. But first, let's focus on getting out of this hellhole. You're right, Naruto-kun. The snake mistress agreed. I'm sorry for letting my emotions get to me. I just want to see that bastard drown in his own blood for what he did to me. Speaking of which, how do you know so much about his plan? Probably Corvo Oji-san. The blonde chuckled, earning nods from the 5 girls. He is my mother's #1 spy master and assassin. He never explained how he does it, but he can get into any place without detection. Yup. Kairi agreed. Well, initially our mission was to find and extract Naruto-kun. Aqua began with a smile. But we will not leave you behind, Anko-chan. We will report to Kushina-sama our findings, and of the change of plans and continue to partake in the exams as normal. However, Naruto sighed. The hard part will be for us to continue to act like we don't know each other until we leave. Meaning this will be the only time we can really be together. All 5 of the girls looked disheartened at this, but they knew their blonde beloved had a point. During the exams, he wouldn't be able to keep his blood clone up to run distraction. So they all would have to act as if they didn't recognize him, with the exception of Anko, though even she wouldn't be able to be open with the blonde as she had already been selected to be the proctor of the second phase of the exams. If that's the case, let's make this night count. Rory stated as she wrapped her arms around Naruto, planting a firm kiss on the blonde teen's lips. Of course this prompted a perverted giggle from the snake mistress. Not like that Anko-chan. Morgiana chuckled, sensing the snake mistress's line of thought. That comes later. Aqua added with a mischievous grin. Hey kid, maybe you should put that seal on them you've been working on. Kurama reminded his host. That way everyone who bears the seal will know when another is in danger, and their location. That's actually a good idea. Naruto mentally nodded. Would you girls mind if I put a seal on you? Naruto suddenly asked, catching all of the girls' attention. What does it do, Naruto-kun? Kairi asked. Kurama and I have been working on it for a while. Anyone who has the seal will be able to feel when another is in danger, and give a rough location of where they are. The blonde replied. I trust you Naruto-kun. Xian stated as she stepped forward, volunteering to be the first one to have the seal placed upon her. Nodding, Naruto took out his Fuinjutsu ink and brush and set to work on the seal, which he had decided to put on her right shoulder blade. He really didn't have a fancy name for it, and settled for just calling it a lover's seal, since he only planned on placing it on his loved ones. What made these special and what really linked the seals together, was that each seal was infused with a small amount of Kurama's chakra. Just enough to power the seal, though still too little to cause any damage to the person. One by one, each of the girls got the seal placed upon them. All in the same location, due to how easy it would be to hide it, and also the fact that it was easier for Naruto to get to without putting his girls in any embarrassing positions. Even Anko got the seal placed upon her, though she had teased the young blonde that she wanted it on her left. Though much to her dismay, Naruto had politely refused with a severe blush on his face. Once done, the girls had decided that if tonight was going to be the only time they were going to be able to be with their beloved, they were going to sleep under the stars and make the most of the little time they had together. Each laying down in a circle with their heads facing the inside of the circle, so that they could all be close to one another. Hokage's office, next morning. Hiruzen hummed a happy tune to himself as he sat down at his desk and began to sift through the pile of paperwork that had already accumulated in the few short hours the village had woken up. Still, he did nothing to sour his mood. Why? Because Danzo had agreed to send a small team of 3 freshly trained root recruits to kill the Haruno girl. Though there was a slight disagreement on what village the team should be from. Hiruzen had insisted that they root recruits wear the Barukagir headband, to try and force the Jinchuriki to lash out at his former village in anger and implant a sense of hatred towards it. Danzo, however, had argued against it, stating that it would be best if his root recruits simply posed as a neutral village. Citing that it would help in the long run and make the weapon more open to attacking any target ordered to without question, instead of relying on a grudge against just one village. Reluctantly, Hiruzen had conceded, as the old war hawk had a point. It would do him or the village any good if the weapon was only focused on one target. However, his cheerful tune quickly ceased when he picked up the previous day's sign-in sheet from the main gates of the village. Seeing a series of names, as well as the village of their origin. Barugakar. Upon reading the names of the visitors and the name of the village, all the color drained away from his face as he felt a chill go up his spine. All the while cursing himself for calling the council meeting the previous day to go over the major and minor details of the Chunin exams, thus making it so that he could not spy on the boy throughout most of the day. And when he did finally check on the boy, he was fast asleep in his apartment. Boar. The elder man called out. Immediately a large man bearing the boar mask appeared in a kneeling position in front of the village leader. Yes, Hokage-sama, your team was assigned to follow the Jinchuriki yesterday. Did anyone approach him at any point throughout the day? Not really, sir. The boar Anbu reported. He met with his team as instructed and received his slip to enter the Chunin exams. The boy did his typical speech about accepting the challenge if he plans to become the Hokage someday. The only event of note was during his visit to the ramen stand, one of the girls from Barukagir entered and ordered 6 miso ramen to go. Did it appear that they knew each other? Hiruzen asked carefully, knowing full well all of the girls that had come to attend the exams were friends with the boy at some point. Which made him a little suspicious of their arrival. No, sir. The Anbu replied. The Jinchuriki had struck up an idle conversation with her and merely wished her luck in the exams before she departed the stand. It seems my initial fears were unfounded. Hiruzen thought to himself. It's too late to withdraw the weapon from the exams. The elder man mentally sighed. So long as the seals hold, he will have no memory of them and it appears they have forgotten about him. Good. If anything else, I can use this to motivate him against his former home later. Thank you for your report, boar. The Hokage stated. You are dismissed. Nodding, the boar-masked Anbu disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving the village elder to his own thoughts. Even if they are here, the weapon should be close to being mentally broken. Hiruzen grinned to himself at the thought of finally being able to wield the power of the Kyuubi. The Haruno girl's death should be the last straw. If not, I may have to arrange an accident with Anko Mitarashi. Academy. Naruto let out a tired yawn as he approached the academy to meet up with his team. Despite only having a few hours of sleep, the young blonde felt rather refreshed after spending the night with his fiancés for the first time in over 7 years. He also found out that Anko was a cuddler, much to the other girls' amusement, when the blonde had woken up with the snake mistress wrapped around his body. Having bid his farewells to his fiancés, Naruto had quickly made a mad dash towards his apartment and dispelled his blood clone before quickly taking a cold shower and getting dressed for the day's events. Morning, Naruto. Sakura greeted the blonde as he approached, biting her lip to prevent her from openly using the kun suffix she desperately wanted to add to his name. Having come to terms with her crush on the blonde. About time you got here, Dobi. Sasuke stated as he kicked off the wall he had been leaning against. Hey, sorry about that, had a few things to take care of before I came here. Naruto chuckled, while scratching the back of his head. At this, Sasuke merely grunted in response, while Sakura eyed him suspiciously. The pinkette could tell that her blonde friend was not being completely honest, but had decided not to push the issue. At least for now, though she did make a mental note to corner the blonde teen about it later. You two ready? Naruto asked, earning a confident grunt from the Uchiha, which Naruto took as a yes, and a nod from Sakura. With that, the trio made their way inside the academy. As they made their way up a flight of stairs, they were immediately greeted with a swarm of people crowding around a door that was supposedly the room they were required to enter to start the exams. Though two Chunin-ranked shinobi were blocking any and all from entering. Being exceptionally rough to a young girl with her brown hair tied up into two buns, giving her sort of a panda-like appearance. Beat it twerps. One of the Chunin stated. You're too weak to even attempt this exam. Hey, the girl exclaimed as she hit the floor, glaring up at her assailant. One of the Chunin smirked as he went to deliver another powerful kick to the downed kunoichi, only for it to be blocked with a loud crack by the blonde Jinchuriki, much to the surprise of those present. Naruto on the other hand merely glared at the man before him. You alright? Naruto asked the kunoichi behind him, earning a nod in confirmation. However, before anything else could be said, Sasuke had approached the duo with an arrogant smirk. Drop the pathetic genjutsu, this is only the second floor. He proudly stated. Hearing this, many whom had gathered all mentally groaned that they had fallen for such an obvious trick, while others silently made their way up the next flight of steps. Naruto meanwhile, mentally slapped his forehead, since he knew the genjutsu was to weed out those who were not observant enough to make it in the exams. Sakura on the other hand, wasn't so keen to bite her tongue. Sasuke, she sighed, that was to weed out those not ready to take this exam. You should listen to your teammate. One of the Chunin stated as he dropped the henge, revealing himself to be an Anbu. You just paved the way for the death of many potential genin. If they are that weak, they shouldn't have become shinobi. Was all Sasuke commented with before ascending up the flight of stairs. Naruto and Sakura were about to follow before they were stopped by the bun-haired girl, and what appeared to be her teammates. Thank you for helping me back there. The girl stated with a slight bow. My name is Tenten Higurashi. Konoha's weapons mistress. Nice to meet you Tenten-san. Naruto replied. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Konoha's prankster king. This caused the girl now identified as Tenten to giggle as she recalled some of the blonde's exploits. While his painting of the Hokage monument was his most standout achievement, considering he did it in broad daylight, another incident came to mind for the budding weapons mistress. One of which involved a fair number of the Hyuga clan members falling victim of their undergarments being laced with itching powder. The only ones spared were most of the branch family, save for Neji, and only a handful from the main branch. Namely Hinata, Hanabi, and surprisingly, Hiyashi. It had been extremely amusing to the bun-haired girl to watch her teammate desperately try to now scratch himself during their training sessions. As such an action was not befitting a member of the great Hyuga clan. It was very youthful of you to defend Tenten-chan. An excited teen with a bowl haircut, dressed in a green spandex outfit exclaimed. I'm Rock Lee, Konoha's beautiful green wild beast. You must be strong to be able to block such an attack. I would like to spar with you right now. Normally, I would love to take you up on a friendly spar, but we don't want to be late for the exams. Naruto pointed out, earning a nod of agreement from Sakura, as well as Tenten. But perhaps we can spar later. Yosh, you make a great point, Naruto-kun. Rock Lee exclaimed. We must hurry to complete this exam. If I fail to complete it, I will do 500 laps around the village on my hands. Is he always like that? The blonde asked, cocking his head to the side as he watched the excitable young genin dash up the stairs, continuing to rant on about various ludicrous challenges he would do if he failed. You have no idea. Tenten sighed. Good luck in the exams. With a bow, she departed with her final teammate that had refused to introduce himself. Well, shall we? Naruto asked his pink-haired teammate, earning a nod before the two of them departed up the stairs, unaware of a trio of eyes following their movements. Reaching the top of the stairs, and finally on the floor they were supposed to be on, the two were greeted by the sight of Kakashi waiting for them, with Sasuke leaning against the wall in a bored fashion. The masked Jonin eyed the two for a moment, almost as if he wanted to say something about how long it took the two of them to arrive. Good, all three of you made it, Kakashi stated with his trademark eye smile. Because if even one of you decided not to come, the rest of the team would have been disqualified from the exams. Wait, why didn't you warn us about that yesterday? Sakura asked, a little annoyed that the silver-haired man had purposely left out a crucial piece of information. Because whether or not you took the exam was up to you. He replied with the same eye smile. I didn't want anyone to feel they were pressured into taking the exams. But you are here, so, good luck. With that, he disappeared into a puff of smoke. He's really not the best for pep talk, is he? Naruto inquired. Was all the Uchiha replied with, while Sakura merely giggled, but agreed nonetheless. Nothing left to say, the trio entered the actual exam room. Jonin Sensei room. With a small cloud, Kakashi appeared in the room just adjacent to the exam room, separated by a large glass window that was hanged to appear like a solid wall from the other side, allowing all of the Jonin senseis to monitor their students' performance, as well as allowing them to keep an eye out for other things as well. Looking out the glass window, his eyes immediately locked onto the massive sword on Zen's back. A wave of coldness washing over him as he recognized the 5 girls who were gathered in the far corner of the room. What are they doing here? He asked himself. And that was Zabuza's sword. Why does she have it? The only good thing the masked Jonin could take away was that neither of the girls seemed to notice Naruto, even when he went on his usual proclamation of passing this exam, just to show everyone he will become Hokage someday. Still, he felt uneasy that 5 girls who once had a close friendship with the boy was in such close proximity, though he knew there was nothing he could do about it. Kakashi could only imagine the fit the Hokage was having right now. Still, as long as the seals were active, Naruto shouldn't have any memory of his time in his home village. It's been a while, Kakashi-san. Breaking out of his musing, he lazily turned to the owner of the voice, seeing a fairly tall man with red hair approaching him. A soft smile on his face. Nagato-san, Kakashi greeted. So you finally decided to become a sensei for a team? The red-haired man inquired. There was an exceptional list of students this year. The silver-haired man lied effortlessly. Since the only reason he took on the position of being the sensei of Team 7 was to keep an eye on Naruto and train the last surviving Uchiha to be able to control the Jinchuriki in the future. Every student is exceptional once you learn how to motivate them. Nagato replied with a smile. Though he could see right through the masked Jonin's lies. It was obvious what Kakashi was really doing as the team's sensei. Especially considering the reports they had received from Tazuna and his family in Wave about the interactions between the masked Jonin and his students. That sword on Zen-san's back. Kakashi began, curious as to how the girl acquired the sentient blade. Ah yes, during a mission, the girls passed through Wave Country. The red-haired Uzumaki man responded. As I recall, Zen-san suddenly broke off from the group and went directly towards 2 graves. As I understand it, the sword chose her to be its new wielder. I see, it must be a great honor for her. Kakashi replied with an eye smile, though on the inside he was seething. Having lost the chance to claim such a blade. Damn it, I knew I should have requested some time off to claim the blade. Turning their attention back to the classroom, both Jonins watched as the number of teams were slowly dwindled down as more and more were caught cheating to answer the questions written on the test. All of which were way above what any normal genin could hope to answer on their own. 1 hour later, an hour had passed before the written test was finally over, with the remaining teams that had stuck around for the final 10th question passing the first phase of the exam. Ibuki had given his speech about how not everything was as it seemed, and there would be times in their shinobi careers when they would have to face the dilemma of putting themselves in danger to complete the mission and save their comrades, or retreating to prevent injury to themselves. Welcome to the Training Ground 44, otherwise known as the Forest of Death. Anko proudly exclaimed to the gathered genin, a malicious smirk on her face. The rules here are simple. The snake mistress continued. You have 5 days to reach the tower in the center of the training ground. Killing is allowed, which is why all of you will have to sign these waivers that are full of all that legal shit that Konoha is not responsible for your death. What if we don't sign? A nameless genin asked. Then you get disqualified and you and your team can run back home to mommy. The purple-haired woman bluntly replied. PFF'd, I'm not afraid. Came Naruto's reply, only to be met with a kunai grazing his cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. Next thing the blonde knew, Anko was draped over his shoulder, giving his blood a lick before chuckling. You know, it's ones like you that die first. She stated loud enough for all to hear, before lowering her voice so only Naruto could hear. Be careful in there. Letting the blonde genin go, Anko took her spot in the front of the group of genin once more to finish her instructions. Explaining that each team will be given either a heaven or earth scroll, and that in order to pass this phase of the exam, each team would have to have one of each. With the exception of the Barugaker team, since they had more members, would require 2 of each. Once everything was explained, and the teams got into position at their designated starting gates, Anko issued the signal for the second phase of the Chunin exams to start, prompting all the teams to rush into the forest. Almost immediately, a scream echoed from the trees, signifying the first death. Who the hell dies that fast? Anko asked herself in disbelief. Additional author's notes, and the Chunin exams are officially underway. I decided to opt out of explaining what was going on within the exam room, instead opting to take a view from the Jonin sensei's point of view. Which also allowed Nagato and Kakashi to talk with one another. Also, figured it would make more sense if there was a one-way glass separating the 2 rooms, to make it easier for the senseis to monitor their students. Now, I will say that just because Nagato is being friendly to Kakashi, doesn't mean he likes him in any way. He has a job to do for now, and he is going to do it to prevent any unneeded suspicion on him. Rest assured, when the invasion hits, Nagato will have a few choice words for the masked pervert. Namely, Shinra Tensei. Next chapter will cover what goes on in the forest, and the attempt on Sakura's life. Too bad for Danzo's route, Naruto is not as weak as they were led to believe. But will have a bit of a lasting effect on the members of Team 7. Author's notes. Alright, the Chunin exams are officially underway with the first test already finished, which I skipped and instead focused on Nagato's conversation with Kakashi. Now the participants must survive the Forest of Death and claim their required scrolls to pass. Not to mention, Anko got to meet the girls and was accepted by them. Something that meant a lot of our snake mistress due to her past experiences with people. The 2 pariahs also informed the girls from Barugaker about their own plan to escape the village. This had also led to the girls warning the 2 about Orochimaru's plans for the invasion. Fortunately Naruto was able to calm the snake mistress before she could set her mind to do something stupid that could jeopardize their plan to escape. We also got to meet Tenten last chapter as well as a look into one of Naruto's past pranks, much to the weapons mistress's amusement. For those wondering, no, she is not going to be in the harem, but she will be a friend later on. Now then, on to the Forest of Death. Discord. Want a sneak peek at future chapters? See what I have planned for future stories? Then come join my Discord server, a multi-purpose server for video games, anime, and fanfiction. Authors are invited to come toss ideas back and forth and share their own stories. Hit me up with a private message for server information. Review Corner. Jinto Lin. Sorry for it feeling too short, but I do try to make each chapter a minimum of 5,000 words. Like I said with the blood clone, I wanted to have it set up that he couldn't just pull it out of nowhere and that it would need time to set up to perform properly. As for Rory, I kind of touched on her nickname back in the first chapter when I was introducing the girls. And yes, I wanted to give Hiruzen a heart attack when he read the sign-in sheet. As for the one who died, sadly not killed by Gaara. Just some poor team that ran right into a massive spider nest. Blaze 1992. I will say this, Tsunade is unaware about Naruto. This will get touched on in about a chapter or two when she is summoned to Barugakure at Kushina's request. Though Kushina will question if the Slug Princess was in on it. Praterkson, Mabui is top pick for sure. Fortunately, or unfortunately depending how you look at it, I have already selected the dark skin representation for the harem. Jägermeister 31. Yeah, the Tenten bit was a little last minute when I was writing the chapter, but I also wanted to mix things up and not have every exact detail follow what happens in canon. As for the Root team, yeah, they are going to get destroyed. Thor 94. Konoha as a whole won't really pay, as they were misled by the Hokage. The ones that will pay are the ones who had full knowledge of who Naruto was, and still went along with it willingly. I already have punishments planned for the three main ones. Nays 151. Yahiko and Konan are alive and are living in Barugakure. I will probably touch on it lightly in a future chapter, but the short version is that AIM was still liberated from Hanzo's tyranny with the help of Barugakure, leading to an alliance between the two villages. The Akatsuki will still be present, just without Pain and Konan and a few other members. Though they are not the focus of this story. Fenreld's Stormblade, actually, I have plans on how both Esdeath and Pyrrha will be introduced into the story. Esdeath's part is going to be a bit comical. As for the team size, this was done on purpose. Barugakure works outside the usual structure of the hidden villages, with each team being more of their own squad. This is part of the reason shinobi from Barugakure are so expensive to hire, but they also have a nearly flawless success rate. Harem. Alright, as it was pointed out to me, there is a lack of representation of dark-skinned girls for the harem. So with that in mind, I have added 2 more girls to represent our dark-skinned beauties. And those 2 are Mabui, from Naruto, and Yoruichi Shihoin, from Bleach. Naturally, both girls are going to have their ages knocked down a little, well, in Yoruichi's case, a lot. Though they will retain their quirks and characteristics. So, here is the final list. Anko, Aqua, Esdeath, Kairi, Koyuki, Mabui, Morgiana, Pyrrha, Rory, Sakura, Zeon, and Yoruichi. Remember me. Chapter 8. Forest of Death. Team 7 had wasted no time when the gates had opened, immediately dashing into the forest, trying to put as much distance between themselves and the other teams as possible that had also started at their gate. Which was much easier said than done, as a handful of the starting teams had aimed to get their scrolls early and actively hunted the other participants right out the gate. Fortunately, Naruto had been able to confuse their pursuers with multiple shadow clones, hinged as his teammates, giving his team time to regroup and plan for their trek through the forest. Now the members of Team 7 stood in a small clearing, various traps set up around them to warn them if any other team were to stumble upon their location. So what's the plan? Sakura inquired, looking between her 2 teammates. It would be best if we got the scroll we needed as soon as possible and head to the tower. Naruto stated. He felt uneasy being in the forest. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something felt off. As if they were being watched, and not by the various creatures that called the Forest of Death home. For once, I agree with the Dobi. Sasuke smirked. Sending a soft glare towards the Uchiha boy, Naruto was a little taken aback by the fact that Sasuke had actually agreed with him. If the young teen's actions in the academy were any indication, he figured Sasuke would have wanted to stay in the forest for a few days to test himself against the other teams. Glancing over at his pink-haired friend, Naruto could see she was a bit surprised as well. Then which one of us should carry the scroll? Naruto inquired, producing the Heaven Scroll from his pocket. He then received his second shock of the day. You keep it, Naruto. The Uchiha instructed as he turned away from the 2 and stared out into the forest. Your ability with shadow clones can help keep it away from enemy teams, do not lose it Dobi. Nodding silently, Naruto moved to put the scroll back in his pocket, though seeing as Sasuke wasn't looking at him, channeled chakra into one of the storage seals on the inside of his jumpsuit. While at the same time, producing a similar looking scroll and placing it in his pocket. If they were lucky, they wouldn't lose their scroll, if not, well, the one to take the scroll was going to be in for a bad surprise. So, how are we going to get the Earth Scroll we need? The pink-haired Kunoichi questioned. Easy. Sasuke grinned as he looked back at the other two members of his team. We go directly to the tower and ambush one of the teams that already have theirs. Turning back around, the last Uchiha started to make his way in the direction of the tower that was located in the center of the forest, not looking to see if the rest of his team was following him or not. As both Sakura and Naruto were rooted firmly in their spots as they tried to process the recent events. Though both had silently agreed that it was a good plan to ambush a team at the tower that already had their scrolls. Though Naruto did muse it would be awkward if the first team they encountered was of his fiancés. So, does Sasuke seem off to you? Naruto inquired in a low voice as the two of them followed after their raven-haired teammate. Yeah, he actually agreed with you instead of arguing and then acknowledged your skill with the shadow clones. Sakura replied in a similar hushed tone. Well, if he is an imposter, I like this one better. The blonde chuckled, earning a small giggle from his friend. Come on, best not to let him get too far ahead of us. Nodding, Sakura took off after Naruto as they increased their speed to catch up with their teammate. Barugakure team, 3 hours later. The 5 girls bounded through the tree branches with effortless ease towards their destination, the center tower. However, their pace was casual as they desired to stay within the forest, in case Naruto required their help. While they had faith in his own skills, he made it very clear that he would be hiding them to avoid suspicion. Within the first hour of entering the forest, the girls had already acquired their required scrolls, as well as a few extras to help eliminate some of the competition. It had almost laughable at how woefully unprepared many of the teams were. Not just in terms of skill and ability as a shinobi, but at their lack of attention to their surroundings and overall, common sense. If anything, the girls did the teams a favor by eliminating them from the exams, as they clearly were not ready. Though Morgiana had desperately prayed to Kami that they would cross paths with the Mutz team that had the audacity to all but demand that she forsake her vows to her beloved. Even going as far as to threaten to force her to submit to him. The mere thought still infuriated her. Oh, how she desperately wanted to smash him into the ground. Group up ahead, Xian stated, using her sensory abilities to identify the locations of various groups. 3 members. Alright, positions girls. Aqua instructed, prompting each of the girls to move into a defensive position to cover each other's openings. Oftentimes called the Kame no Kaisei, or the turtle formation. A handful of seconds later, the quintet entered a small clearing surrounded by dense trees to find a trip from Kumogakure. All 3 of which immediately got into a defensive stance as the 5 girls entered the clearing. Great. The dark-skinned male with white hair sighed, moving the sucker that was in his mouth to the other side. Of all the teams we had to encounter, it had to be the one from Barugakure. The others watched on as the young man began to come up with outlandish and ridiculous scenarios that would play out if they were to fight, causing the girls from Barugakure to form a sweat drop at his antics, while his teammates could only shake their head in annoyance before the red-haired woman with dark skin and yellow eyes pummeled him in the head to shut him up. I didn't expect to see you here, Mabui-san. Aqua greeted the remaining female of Kumogakure with a smile, as the blue-haired young woman recognized the remaining woman. A young, dark-skinned woman with vibrant green eyes and straight, light gray hair pulled back into a bun, with 2 bangs that framed both sides of her smooth face, which only served to make her emerald eyes stand out even more. Her attire consisted a dark gray low-cut outfit, which displayed her sizable cleavage, a tactic used to catch male opponents off guard, even some female one as well, with mesh armor underneath. A pair of black bicycle shorts cover her lower region, accompanied by Shinhai kunoichi boots. A kunai holster positioned on her left thigh, while her shuriken pouch was located on her right thigh. A pair of black hand guards, and a modified Kumogakure white flak jacket that covered her stomach only in a girdle-like fashion finished her attire. We only arrived this morning. The now identified Mabui replied, relaxing her guard a little, much to her teammates' surprise. And you? We arrived yesterday afternoon, the blue-haired Kunoichi stated, taking a similar relaxed posture, with the other 4 girls from Barugakure relaxing as well. Mabui, what are you doing? The red-haired Kunoichi demanded while she readied her katana for attack, wondering why her teammate was acting towards the girls. They're a potential enemy. Exactly. They could be luring us into a false sense of security, so we will drop our guard, and then they will capture us, take our scroll and sell us as slaves to a foreign country. The white-haired teenage boy added, taking an offensive posture as well. Karui, Omoi, stand down, now, Mabui demanded, glaring at her 2 teammates, prompting them to lower their weapons and look at her in confusion. Sorry about them, Aqua-san. It's okay. Aqua waved it off. It's actually refreshing to see a team ready for these exams. We've lost count of how many teams that were woefully unprepared for this. Speaking of which, what scroll do you have? At this, both Omoi and Karui tensed at the question. Their hands itching to grab their weapons once more. We have the Heaven Scroll. The gray-haired young woman replied without a worry. Nodding, Aqua turned to Kairi, whom had already begun digging through her pouch before producing an earth scroll and handing it to the blue-haired Kunoichi, whom in return handed it to Mabui. Much to the shock of the other 2 Kumo genin. We have a few extra. Kairi smiled. As stated, we've lost count of how many teams were not prepared for this. Rory added with a giggle. Has there been any word yet? Mabui inquired the girls in a soft tone, causing Omoi to scowl slightly at the question. Something that did not go unnoticed. Yes, Aqua answered with a smile, causing Mabui to look up in surprise. We found him, now we just need to bring him home. He's here, isn't he? The gray-haired woman narrowed her eyes as she began to piece together the pieces. What are you talking about, Mabui? Karui asked with an expression of confusion. What's this about and who is this guy you are talking about? Naruto-kun. Kairi whispered. Naruto, wait, isn't that the name of the brat that the Raikage forced you into that engagement thing with? The redhead stated rather untactful, earning a few scowls from the Barugakure girls. I wasn't forced into the engagement. Mabui sighed. It is open-ended that I am allowed to walk away without any threat to the alliance of our villages. However, I feel it is only fair that I at least meet him and get a chance to know him before I make any choices. Which is very admirable, Mabui-san. Zian commented. Meanwhile, Omoi scowled at the implications as he walked away from the group of girls and posted himself against a tree just on the outskirts of the clearing. Clearly not wanting to hear what the girls were talking about. What's with him? Morgiana inquired as she noticed the white-haired teenager walk away. He has a crush on me, and is jealous that I have rejected him every time he has asked me out on a date. The gray-haired young woman replied with a slight tone of frustration. Anyways, did you meet him? What's he like? Yes, we did get to meet him. Aqua replied with a slight sigh, a faraway look in her eyes. After 7 long years, it felt great to be held by him again. Wait, what happened? Karui blinked, as she was not aware of the entire situation revolving around this Naruto Go. The only thing she had been informed of was the arranged engagement between the boy and her friend and teammate. 7 years ago I was supposed to meet my fiancé for the arranged marriage. It was supposed to be a surprise for him, as his mother had arranged for our meeting to be on his birthday. Mabui recounted with a slight frown. However, before we could meet, he was kidnapped from his own village. What? Why? Karui exclaimed. At this, all of the girls exchanged a look before Aqua let out a sigh. Because Naruto-kun is a Jinchuriki. The brunette beauty stated bluntly, earning a gasp of realization from the red-haired Kumo girl. And you think Konoha took him? Not think. We know. Morgiana stated, clenching her fist in anger. He's being monitored, no doubt by Anbu. Aqua continued to explain the situation surrounding the blonde-haired boy. It was by pure luck that I managed to run into him last night, and I am sure if we didn't play that communication game when we were younger, we wouldn't have been able to talk at all. Communication game? Mabui tilted her head in confusion. Yes. Aqua giggled. When we were younger, we created a form of rhythmic communication to give each other answers to a test or just talk during class without the teacher suspecting anything. But why didn't he try to run away or get a message out? Karui asked, crossing her arms over her chest as she tried to wrap her head around what she was hearing. Because he had a memory seal and a loyalty seal placed upon him, which only recently broke. Zian answered, earning a scowl from both of the Kumo girls. So he wasn't even aware he had been kidnapped until about 2 weeks ago. So there's no chance to meet him right now? The gray-haired Kunoichi inquired. Due to them knowing about our history with Naruto-kun, we can't afford to be openly friendly with him. Aqua lamented with a sigh. But you are an unknown, so you may get a chance to talk with him without arising too much suspicion, just don't be too quick to judge. He has to put on an act until we can get him out of the village. I hope Kushina-sama nails the Hokage's balls to the wall for the shit he's pulled. Rory hissed in anger, earning a nod of agreement from the other Beru girls. Wait, are you talking about the Kushina? As in Kushina of the Crimson Blade? The red-haired Kumo girl asked, wide-eyed. Why the hell hasn't she already smashed down the gates and razed the village? Because Kushina-sama has something far more devious planned. Zian gave a sadistic grin. We don't know what it is, but willing to bet, it will cause far more lasting marks than property damage. Well, we better. Suddenly a wave of coldness washed over all of the Beru girls, prompting them all to look in the same direction just to the east of them. Each of their eyes widening in terror as they realized what the feeling was. Naruto-kun. They all mentally screamed. We gotta go, now. Aqua ordered, earning a concerned look from Mabui due to the girl's sudden change of demeanor. What's going on? The Kumo girl asked as she watched the girls begin to bound off. Naruto-kun is in trouble, was the quick answer she was given before the group of girls from Barugakure disappeared into the trees at full speed. Good, maybe if something happens to the brat, Mabui-chan will finally notice me. Omoi thought darkly as he kicked up off the tree he was leaning against to rejoin his two teammates. Team 7. Sasuke was writhing in pain on the ground, desperately grasping his neck where the strange man had bitten him, screaming out in agony before falling unconscious. Sakura on the other hand sported numerous minor injuries and was battered and bruised and panting heavily, leaning against a tree for support as she could only helplessly look on as the monster that had attacked them stalked slowly towards her blonde teammate and friend. She struggled to get up to help, but only succeeded in stumbling over her own feet and falling face first into the dirt. Who the air you, bastard? Naruto questioned aggressively as he took a defensive stance with a kunai in hand, readying himself for anything this creepy-looking man would throw at him. Ku, isn't this a surprise? The lanky man chuckled with a sinister smile as he stalked closer to Naruto. The missing heir of the Uzumaki royal family, my, what a scandal my former sensei has embroiled himself in. Hearing this, both Sakura and Naruto's eyes widened, each for different reasons. For Sakura, it was in shock upon learning that Naruto was thought to be some missing heir to a royal family. Naruto though, it was in fear as he realized just who it was that stood before them. From there, the blonde Jinchuriki was able to connect the dots as to what the snake Sanin had done to the fallen Uchiha. Then there was the fact that Orochimaru knew exactly who he was, which caused the blonde boy to cast a cautious glance at his pink-haired teammate, knowing full well that she had heard what the snake bastard had said. Guess she is going to have some questions if we survive this. Naruto mused. We'll get through this, Kit. Kurama reassured his host. If nothing else, I can take control and we can brush it off as my chakra seeping out due to dire stress. Would prefer not to. The blonde mentally sighed as he imagined various scenarios that would cause. We're lucky they didn't tamper with the seal due to the events in Wave. Guarantee that if we do that here, the old bastard will tighten the seals. Fair point, Kit. The fox agreed with a light scowl. Sure, he would be able to ward off the memory seal and loyalty seal if it was to be reapplied in other such seals, but if the bastards tampered with his actual seal, it could spell all sorts of trouble for the both of them. As for young Sasuke-kun, I merely gave him something to remember me by. Orochimaru chuckled, turning his attention fully back towards the blonde before him, causing Naruto to flinch under the mont's cold glare. You, however, could become a problem to my plans. At this, Naruto readied his kunai, trying to shake off his fear as much as he could. He knew he stood no chance against the snake Sannin as he was. Especially due to how this cesspool of a village had sabotaged his growth. Especially with that beast in your gut. Orochimaru stated. Without warning, the snake's tongue shot out of his mouth towards Naruto, completely catching the young blonde off guard as the tongue wrapped around his arms and chest, while the tip of the tongue moved to lift up the lower part of his jumpsuit, exposing the seal on his belly. Shit. Both Naruto and Kurama thought at the same time, immediately knowing what the snake bastard was planning. Sure enough, Orochimaru's fingers on his right hand lit up with a blue fiery-like aura at the tips, aiming straight for the seal. Out of desperation, Naruto used both hands to block it from making contact, fighting against the snake-like tongue that was wrapped around him. Just barely keeping the Sannin from making contact with his gut. Hey, assbutt! A girl shouted from the side of the two. The next thing either of them knew, Orochimaru was sent smashing into a tree courtesy of the blunt end of Rory's massive halberd, as the black-haired beauty landed next to Naruto. Casting a concerned look to her fiancé, receiving a subtle nod from the blonde. Giving a subtle nod of her own, Rory then turned her attention to the tree she had sent the snake bastard flying into, gripping her weapon. As she did so, Xian landed next to her with her massive sword at the ready. As the two raven-haired girls kept watch for the snake Sannin, the rest of the girls entered the battlefield, though it wasn't missed by Sakura that as each of the girls entered the small clearing, their eyes immediately locked onto Naruto, and she had a feeling it wasn't because of his orange jumpsuit. We meet again, Naruto-san. The girl with blue hair commented as she approached the blonde as he slowly stood up, her blue eyes scanning all over his body for signs of any serious injuries. Are you okay? Yeah, thank you, Aqua-san. He replied, wanting to alleviate any concern his fiancés had. Knowing that his lover's seal had to have notified them that he was in danger. How does she know your name, Naruto? Sakura inquired from her position sitting on the forest floor, prompting the blue-haired girl to turn around and see the state the pink-haired girl was in. Kairi, help her. Aqua instructed before turning her attention back to Sakura as the red-haired Baru Kunoichi set to work checking over the pinket's injuries before utilizing her Iryo ninjutsu to heal her wounds, much to the amazement of Sakura. We met last night at Ikiruka's when I went to get some ramen for my team, even paid for my order. Such a gentleman. With her task of healing Sakura done, the redhead then moved over to Naruto, earning a small smile from him as he nodded for her to go ahead and heal him. Despite the fact that Kurama could easily take care of his wounds, he knew it would mean the world to his red-haired fiancé if she could help him. Across from them, Sakura watched as her blonde teammate and friends seemed perfectly relaxed around this strange girls. While she was well aware that Barugakure were allies with Konoha, they were still participating in an exam, making everyone, even teams from their own village, a potential enemy. What happened to him? Morgiana asked, gesturing towards the unconscious Sasuke. Son of a bitch pedophile bit his neck and put a hickey on him of some kind. Naruto replied, looking Aqua directly in the eye, making sure she understood exactly what he was implying. Nodding, The blue-haired beauty moved over to the fallen Uchiha, checking the boy's neck to identify the mark. Seeing it, a scowl settled in upon her face. Sure enough, just as she suspected, Orochimaru had marked the Uchiha with his cursed mark. Quickly, she reached into her pouch and pulled out a brush and some fuinjutsu ink. What's she going to do to Sasuke? Sakura asked, standing up. The one that attacked you wasn't a genin, as I am sure you know by now. Zien commented as she approached the group. His name is Orochimaru, the traitor Sanin over your village. As for what Aqua-chan is doing, she is applying a suppression seal to keep the curse seal restrained until it can be removed safely. That's what the bastard did when he bit Sasuke, Sakura-chan. Naruto added as he joined the girls, squatting down next to Sakura before looking up at the other black-haired beauty who was now approaching the group. Slimy bastard ran away. Rory grunted as she leaned against her weapon with a pout. And Sasha here was so eager to taste his blood. So, you're the team from Barugakure? Sakura inquired, attempting to strike up some small talk with the blue-haired girl identified as Aqua continued to work. You are correct. Zien replied. Name's Zien, Barugakure's Queen of Blades. I am Morgiana, Barugakure's Feral Fist Master. The pink-haired Baru Kunoichi introduced herself, prompting Sakura to take a double glance, since only her father shared her hair color, much to the mont's embarrassment. Rory, the Reaper. The girl with long black hair stated with a smirk as she gauged the Pinket's reaction to her nickname. She was not disappointed as Sakura's expression was one mixed of shock, and a trace amount of fear. I'm Kairi. The redhead that healed them earlier introduced herself. My goal is to surpass Tsunade-sama as the elemental nation's best medical kunoichi. And the snow cone over there is Aqua, Barugakure's next fuinjutsu prodigy. The girl named Morgiana stated as she gestured towards the blue-haired kunoichi that was finishing up with the seal on Sasuke. Pleased to meet you all. Sakura bowed her head. My name is Sakura Haruno. As for my dreams, well, they have shifted recently. The four girls from Barugakure each smirked and shared a knowing look between one another before they all turned their attention to their blonde lover, whom only shrugged his shoulders with an expression of confusion written on his face. He should be fine, but he will be out of action for up to 12 hours. Aqua informed the two conscious members of Team 7. Thank you Aqua-san, Naruto said as he stood up once more to meet the blue-haired kunoichi. It is no problem, we are all friends after all. She smiled. What scroll do you need? Kairi inquired. We have the heaven scroll, so we need an earth. The blonde Jinchuriki answered. Upon hearing the answer, Kairi quickly rummaged through her pouch and produced an earth scroll, handing it to Naruto, much to the shock of Sakura to see the girl just hand over one of the scrolls as if it was nothing. Thank you, Kairi-san. Naruto smiled, causing the poor redhead to blush, prompting her to clench her fists tightly to restrain herself from tackling him in a hug and claiming his lips. We can stick around, if you would like Naruto-san. Aqua offered. We should be good now, thank you. The blonde replied with a smile. We're going to rest and set off first thing in the morning for the tower. Besides, Kairi-chan is already struggling to keep her emotions reined in, as am I. The blonde mentally sighed. After the previous night, he desperately wanted to take each of his girls into his arms once more. Very well, Naruto-san. The blue-haired kunoichi replied, a little disheartened at his refusal, but she understood his reasoning. She could already see the frustration washing over Kairi's face, and no doubt the other girls were feeling the same way. We shall see you at the tower then. With one final nod, the Barugakure kunoichi departed towards the massive tower visible from their location, leaving Sakura and Naruto alone with an unconscious Sasuke. Silence fell over the two conscious team members as Sakura stayed in her sitting position near the tree, trying to wrap her head around what had just transpired in the span of 20 minutes. First they were attacked by Orochimaru, Konoha's most well-known traitor, for the sole purpose of placing some sort of mark on Sasuke for reasons she didn't quite understand yet, though she knew no good could come from it. Then there was the fact that the snake Sanin had called Naruto the missing heir to the Uzumaki royal family, and even implied that the Hokage was involved somehow. Lastly, there was the Barugaker team. The Pinkett couldn't put her finger on it, but it felt as if Naruto had a connection with those girls, far deeper than what he had let on. The sense of familiarity that seemed to emanate from each of them when they acknowledged each other. Especially the red-haired one, Kairi. Sakura noted how the aspiring medic blushed when she was close to Naruto while she was healing him. Not to mention, she could see the girl's muscles tensing, as if trying to restrain herself from doing something more physical with the blonde boy, causing a sense of jealousy to rise up within the Pinkett. Sakura didn't know the exact reason why, but she was positive that the 5 girls had come to help Naruto, and that her and Sasuke had only benefited due to being on the same team as the blonde. I say when we get to the tower, we should corner him about it. Inner commented. Why not now? Sakura mentally questioned. I mean, Sasuke is unconscious and we're alone. Because we're in the middle of the forest of death. Her inner self pointed out. We may be alone, but we are not safe. Good point. The Pinkett conceded, casting another glance at Naruto who was beginning to clear an area near the massive roots of one of the trees. Having made her choice to corner the blonde in the tower, Sakura got up from her spot and set out to help Naruto set up the camp. While she furnished a makeshift shelter of sticks, leaves and mud, the blonde Jinchuriki set off to make various traps around the campsite as well as secure some food and water from the bountiful resources the forest offered, before heading back to camp. We're being watched, Kit. Kurama growled, sensing 3 figures lingering just on the outskirts of the trap line he had set up. I know, they've finally managed to take out all of my clone teams that were sent out as decoys. Pretty sure our scrap with the pedophile attracted them to our location. Naruto replied with a small sigh. Took them long enough, even if your clones weren't fighting back. The fox commented. So what's your plan, Kit? I've got a surprise in store for them, but I am going to need your help. The blonde chuckled darkly. Later that night, screams echoed through the trees as various genin teams fell to the nightly horrors the properly named Forest of Death concealed. For his part, Naruto did not envy those who were unprepared for this place. Having sought refuge in this forest numerous times over the past 7 years away from the angry mobs that would gather each year on his birthday, he knew full well the horrors this forest held. Which was part of the reason he had insisted he would take the night watch to watch over his team and allow them to sleep through the night. As much as she had grown over the past few weeks, he knew Sakura wasn't ready for this place at night time. As he sat there, he could feel the 3 chakra signatures maneuvering through the traps he had set up. Smirking to himself, he waited for them to get closer to the camp before he stood up and faced the 3 unwanted visitors. This was the other reason Naruto had insisted he take watch. You're not genin, he blatantly stated, eyeing the 3 individuals. What are you doing here? Kyuubi Jinchuriki. One of them stated stiffly, prompting Naruto to frown slightly. Emotionless, skills higher than that of your typical genin and full knowledge of my status. Naruto surmised. This has the old bastard scent all over it. You 2 carry out the mission, make sure she doesn't survive. The one in front of Naruto ordered, causing him to scowl further. But leave Uchiha-sama unspoiled. At this, Naruto couldn't help but let out a low laugh, catching the 3 root members' attention. Looking up, he decided to let them in on his own personal joke. Fortunately, my team isn't here, he said. As soon as he spoke, the campsite began to dissolve into nothing, revealing that it had been a genjutsu all along, much to the horror of the 3 nameless root members, since their mission was now in jeopardy. Let me guess, you were ordered by that old bastard to kill Sakura-chan in order to break my mind and force me to use the Kyuubi's power. Naruto gave a sadistic knowing grin. How we just skip to the part where I just used the fox's power instead, shall we? Upon saying that, Naruto's eyes flashed red, as red and yellow chakra began to engulf his body. A single chakra tail swaying in a threatening manner behind him. A few seconds later, Screams erupted through the trees, shattering the still of the night. Additional author's notes. And done. So this chapter was fun. Sakura got to meet the girls, and while she wasn't able to show it, she is a little jealous of how familiar they seem to act around Naruto. Not to mention, Petty Maru blurted out Naruto's secret, which gives our little Pinkett a bit more to ponder about her blonde teammate, friend, and crush. Now, as for Naruto identifying Orochimaru simply based off the snake mentioning his old sensei, I figured it would be common knowledge that Hiruzen trained the tree Sannin as it would be on of the old month's shining achievements before Orochimaru betrayed the village. Also expanded the Barugaker girls a bit more, with their nicknames and dreams for the future. I figured Kairi would be the best pick to be the medic of the team, with her caring personality, while Aqua would be the one that would be the Fuinjutsu specialist with her focused mind. As for the others, they are clearly the front-line support of the team. Though I will say that all of the girls are proficient in Fuinjutsu, just Aqua is more adept at it. As for the bit with Sasuke, I debated on whether I would have Naruto put the suppression seal on the curse mark or not, before deciding to have Aqua do it. Which hers will be a lot more efficient than what Kakashi would have done, so there is less of a threat of him being influenced by the mark. And lastly, Mabui was introduced into the story, with a little bit of background about her engagement with Naruto. As you notice, she doesn't use the chan suffix with the girls or the kun suffix with Naruto. This is on purpose as she doesn't have the same bonds as the others do, at least not yet. As stated, Naruto was kidnapped before they were to officially meet, so not even Naruto is aware of her yet. We can also see Omoi is a bit jealous of Naruto, which is going to be fun in the next chapter during the preliminary fights. So you can guess who Naruto is going to end up fighting. So, last chapter we got to meet Mabui, and learn a bit about her affiliation with Naruto and his girls. It should also be noticed that instead of using the chan suffix with the girls, and the kun suffix with Naruto, she uses the san suffix instead. This is because while she is friendly to the girls, and has hung out with them occasionally, she doesn't have the same bond with them. As with Naruto, she hasn't officially met him yet, since he was kidnapped before their engagement was to be announced. So should be interesting to see how Naruto will react upon learning he has yet another fiancé. On that note, Sakura is also piecing together more of the puzzle revolving around her blonde teammate. With Orochimaru announcing his heritage and then her noticing how the Barugaker's team acted around Naruto when they conveniently came to their aid. Now, our little Pinkett has some questions, though how much does Naruto trust her? Discord. Want a sneak peek at future chapters? See what I have planned for future stories? Then come join my Discord server, a multi-purpose server for video games, anime, and fanfiction. Authors are invited to come toss ideas back and forth and share their own stories. Hit me up with a private message for server information. Review Corner. Nays 151. I probably should have described that better. When referring to the fight with Orochimaru, Kurama was implying for an explosive, berserker release of his energy, which is why he referenced the bridge in Wave Country. Against the Root team, however, it was refined and controlled, showing that due to Kurama and Naruto having such a strong bond with one another, Naruto has complete control over his chakra. Even though he is a little out of practice. As for Karui, rest assured she will be a friend to our favorite blonde. Enter the Dark. What I mean to say, is that Kushina will be focusing on the main three that were involved with the kidnapping of her son, that being Hiruzen, Jiraiya, and Kakashi. The next Hokage, Tsunade, will be meting out punishments for the others that were involved. However, most of the populace of Konoha were unaware of just who Naruto was. They only knew he held the Kyuubi, the one responsible for the death of many of their loved ones. The only ones that knew who Naruto was is mostly just the Elder Council. Jinto Lin, yeah, I got plans for Sasuke that will be revealed in the coming chapters. As for Mabui, she was aware Naruto got kidnapped, and yes, her and Aqua as well as the rest of the girls have met a handful of times. Also correct, Aqua is the team diplomat, as she is usually the more level-headed one of the girls. As for the girls' introductions, kind of my thought process was trying to decide on roles and reputations that would fit each girl. As for Aqua, holding back the darkness, while I get the reference, it was not intended at the time. Since I am still playing the first Kingdom Hearts game, Jägermeister 31. Yeah, it is going to be an interesting conversation between Sakura and Naruto, especially after Mabui approaches him during the preliminaries. And yes, Yoruichi will have her usual characteristics and quirks, it's part of what makes her, her. Edeth 756. No, Tsunade will not be in this harem. The harem list is complete as listed below. Our favorite booze-drinking Hokage will remain his godmother. Fenreld Stormblade, yeah, not bad considering Mabui was literally a last-minute addition to the list. Having the Chunin exams just made it easier to introduce her and integrate her into the harem early on. As for Hiruzen, yeah, he is going to be shitting a quarry's worth of bricks when Kushina comes to the village. It's going to be great. Dova 117. Yes, I am looking forward to doing that part, when Hiruzen sees his plan falling apart at the seams. As for Sasuke, I will be touching on that here soon. Either in this chapter or the next one. Harem, Anko, Aqua, Esdeath, Kairi, Koyuki, Mabui, Morgiana, Pira, Rory, Sakura, Zeon, and Yoruichi. Remember me. Chapter 9. Hiruzen mentally scowled as he scanned his eyes over the genin that had succeeded in surviving the Forest of Death. Among those that had succeeded was a certain pink-haired member of Team 7, much to the elder man's displeasure, as the team had arrived in the afternoon of the second day. Meaning that the route team that Danzo had sent in to eliminate the girl had failed, and were no doubt killed before they could carry out their objective. The only question was, who had eliminated the route team? His first suspicion was that the team could have been unfortunate enough to run into either the team from Barugakure or the Suna team. However, both teams had arrived well before the route members last reported in. Meaning they were killed the first night. Then to make matters worse, he had gotten word that Orochimaru had infiltrated the village and had targeted Sasuke Uchiha. At first, he had thought that this was a blessing in disguise, seeing as another opportunity to break the boy and finally turn young Naruto into the weapon he was meant to be. With that in mind, he had dispatched Anko and a few Anbu in hopes of using the woman's hatred for her former sensei to drive her to do something reckless. It had looked promising at first, as the snake mistress had exhibited her usual hatred towards her former sensei and had taken to hunting him down with the same zeal he had expected of her. However, for reasons unknown to the elder village leader, the snake Sanin had retreated for the time being, leaving the aging Hokage with yet another failed means to break the boy. This of course led to another issue. One Sasuke Uchiha. Reports had stated that Orochimaru had succeeded in giving the boy his curse mark. However, when Kakashi had checked in on the boy, the masked Jonin had discovered that someone had already sealed the curse mark, using a rather intricate containment seal that was powered by the boy's own chakra system. Well above his own skills in Fuinjutsu, almost on par with Jiraiya. This of course prompted both Hiruzen and Kakashi to question both Sakura and Naruto separately, with the Hokage questioning the young blonde. Both of which answered honestly that the blue-haired girl from Barugakure had come across them during their fight with Orochimaru and had managed to drive off the snake Sanin with her team, before administering first aid and sealing the curse seal that had been placed on Sasuke. Hearing this, Hiruzen had dismissed the two members of Team 7 and summoned the Beru team. When asked why they would come to the aid of a potential rival team during the exams, Aqua had pointed out that despite it being an exam, both villages were still allies and the individual attacking Team 7 was not part of the exams, and it was their duty to aid their allies. Something the elder man had to concede to. Fortunately, it appeared that despite two separate encounters with the girls from Barugakure, young Naruto had shown no signs of recognition of the girls, allowing Hiruzen to mentally breathe a sigh of relief. Even better for the elder man was that none of the girls seemingly remembered the blonde boy. Though he did recall one of his Anbu reporting a small incident between one of the girls and Kiba, in which the feral boy was firmly informed that the girl he was flirting with was already engaged. So, perhaps all of the girls had moved on with their lives after no traces of the blonde boy had turned up. Peering down over the contestants that had passed the second exam, allowing his aging eyes to scan over the small crowd. Pleased to see that the girls from Barugakure had isolated themselves to the far side of the group, chatting idly amongst one another, though he didn't miss Kiba stealing glances at the pink-haired girl from the Baru team. Sum really needs to rein in her son. Hiruzen thought with a mental frown, deducting that the girl the feral boy was eyeing was the one he had attempted, and failed, to flirt with a few days prior. The boy had already been informed that the girl was engaged to someone else. I just hope he doesn't cause an incident between the two villages. The elder village leader really didn't want Barugakure to have any reason to stay within Konoha's walls any longer than necessary. Each minute they remained within the village increases the chances of them discovering Naruto, and Hiruzen didn't know how much his poor old heart could take before it would give out on him. Shaking the thoughts away, he approached the podium that stood above the arena that they had all gathered in. Congratulations to you all, he called out, catching the attention of all the participants in the arena. For passing the second exam. Now, the third examination is about to commence, but before I go into the specifics of how it will be conducted, I would like to make one thing perfectly clear. The elder village leader continued. It pertains to the underlying purpose of the Chunin exams. At this, many of the teams began to quietly murmur to themselves in confusion. With the exception of the Barugakure team, many who had participated in the exams had done so under the impression that if they succeeded, they were promoted to the rank of Chunin. Even Naruto himself was a little confused as to what the old bastard was getting at with this little speech. Why do you suppose an examination of this nature is being jointly conducted by all of the nations in our mutual alliance? The Hokage inquired. Again, many of the genin that had gathered in the arena looked around in confusion. All the while the girls from Barugakure, as well as Naruto, narrowed their eyes just slightly. The latter wondering just where the old man was going with this. To promote friendship among the allied nations and raise the level and standards of our respective shinobi. However, be very clear about what those fine-sounding words actually mean. Hiruzen called out, as he continued his speech. So in other words, look underneath the underneath. Naruto mentally mused. This series of so-called examinations are, in fact, he left a pause for dramatic effect as he saw each of the participants subconsciously leaning forward to hear what he had to say next. A war in miniature between all of our allied lands. Gasps of shock echoed throughout the arena. What do you mean? One of the Chunin hopefuls exclaimed, once the initial shock had worn off of them. If you were to study our recent history, it would swiftly become apparent that our alliance is in fact, a temporary and mutually beneficial agreement between a group of geographically contiguous lands. The Hokage continued to explain, taking a short puff from his pipe while doing so. Whose previous existence was one of continual strife, constantly jockeying against one another both openly, and in secret for the power and control over resources that were perpetually depleted almost to exhaustion. Until a better way was devised. The Chunin exams, the elder man finished his small history lesson. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. An Otogakure genin exclaimed. I thought the point of this exam was to weed out who is strong enough to be a Chunin. Make no mistake. When this exam is done, it will have had the side effect of winnowing out any applicants unfit to ascend to the rank of Chunin. Hiruzen replied, leveling his eyes at the Oto genin that had spoken out so brashly. But even more importantly, it serves as an arena wherein, for the honor of their respective homelands, young shinobi may fight to the death, if need be. For the honor of their lands. Ino herself out loud, trying to comprehend just exactly what the Hokage was telling them. This third examination will be conducted under the watchful eyes of a number of distinguished guests, including the rulers and nobility of the various lands you all aspire to serve. Hiruzen explained, taking another puff from his pipe. and among their number will be fellow Kages who rule over their respective villages. They will be watching you. Which was something the elder man was not looking forward to, desperately praying to Kami that the entire team from Barugakure would be eliminated from moving forward. He really didn't want to meet with Kushina face to face. Though he knew it was pointless, as the girls were well trained. He only hoped his cover story for Naruto would appease the Uzumaki woman. If any one nation's applicants demonstrate outstanding skill and superiority, the noblemen from every land will be quick to commission work from those trained in that superior nation. He continued, mentally grinning slightly since his own village had a strong batch of applicants, with the only direct competition being that of Beru and Suna. Conversely, if a particular country's applicants are shown to be incompetent or feeble, commissions to that country will dwindle. So in other words, these exams provide a public arena for each country to show off and boast of the strength of its shinobi, and by extension, the strength of the country itself. Shikamaru summarized lazily in easy-to-understand terms for everyone. Troublesome. Correct. Hiruzen commented, nodding to the young Nara for his accurate assessment. These exams provide a public arena for each country to show off and boast the strength of its shinobi, and the strength of their country itself. In short, the better you perform, the better your village looks in the eyes of potential clients. As such, you risk not only your own futures and your dreams, but the dignity and prestige of your home village as well. The elder Hokage finished. Whatever. The red-headed boy from Suna scoffed. Could you wrap up the philosophical talk and get down to the life and death stuff? HMPH. Hiruzen grunted at the red-haired boy's rudeness. So you insist that I explain the third exam then? Very well. However, the Hokage was interrupted as a sickly-looking man appeared in front of the crowd of genin, via the use of the Shunshin technique in a kneeling position. Forgive my interruption, Hokage-sama. The sickly man stated. If you don't mind, I will handle the proceedings of the third exam. Very well, Hayate. Hiruzen nodded, a bit thankful for the interruption. Now with someone else taking over the explanation of the third leg of the exams, he could focus on observing the Chunin hopefuls. Namely, the blonde Jinchuriki. Congratulations on making it to the third exams, I will be your proctor for this leg of the exams. The sickly man turned to face the group of genin. My name is Hayate Gecko. Sadly, it appears as there are too many of you currently. To too many of us? Kiba questioned, confused, earning a bark in confirmation from his companion. Under the traditional rules of the exam, we have to have a preliminary test to reduce the number of applicants who'll proceed to the final exam. Hayate explained, earning a series of murmurings between the Chunin hopefuls. As Hokage-sama mentioned, a number of honored guests will be observing you during the third exam, so we must make the exam intense, tight, and fast-moving. So anyway, the sickly proctor continued, anyone who doesn't feel up to the challenge, either physically or mentally, can walk away now. Just take one step forward. Because the preliminaries start now. In case I forgot to mention, from here on in you will be fighting as individuals, Hayate added on to his initial announcement. And not as members of a team. So you can make the decision right for you without worrying about it affecting the rest of your team. Only one participant had taken the option to forfeit. The same silver-haired boy with glasses from the first exam that had the information cards on the other participants. Seeing this, 6 individuals narrowed their eyes at the boy's withdrawal, feeling as if something was off. However, unable to voice their opinion on the matter, Naruto and the girls from Barugakure kept their mouths shut for the time being. Very well, if no one else would like to back out, we shall continue with the preliminaries. Hayate announced with a slight cough. Matches will be selected at random and posted on the scoreboard above. As if on cue, the scoreboard above the arena lit up, and began to cycle through their names in a blur as the crowd of genin watched with bated breath. Some eager to have their turn in the arena, while others were silently praying it wouldn't land on them. After a few seconds, the names stopped. Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato. The first match is about to begin. Hayate announced. Will the contestants step forward? Everyone else, please take your places in the stands above. As the two combatants remained in the arena, the rest of the genin filed up the stairs to take their spots in the stands overlooking the arena, giving them all a good view of the field below. As they did so, Hiruzen watched intently as the girls from Barugakure seemed to approach the remaining members of Team 7, only to completely pass the blonde and the pinkett by without a second glance, allowing the elder man to breathe a silent sigh of relief. Turning his attention to the two participants below, Hayate watched as both Sasuke and Yoroi took their spots opposite of each other, each adopting their own taijutsu stances as they prepared for their match. Seeing both of them were ready, the sickly proctor started the match before quickly jumping out of the way to avoid being caught in the middle. In a blur of motion, Yoroi shot out 3 shurikens towards the Uchiha with blinding precision, only for the raven-haired genin to deflect all 3 back towards his opponent with a single fluid motion. Seeing his initial attack fail, Yoroi quickly charged forward in a blur of speed to engage Sasuke in a taijutsu match. With Sakura and Naruto, from up in the stands, both Naruto and Sakura watched on as their raven-haired teammate exchanged blows with his opponent, before eventually catching him in an arm bar. However, the fight below was not what was on the pinkett's mind. While she cared for her teammates, she had something more pressing at the front of her mind. Subtly, she would glance between her blonde teammate, whom was focused on the match below, and to the girls from Barugakure. Though she could have sworn that the red-haired girl, Kairi, would steal glances at Naruto. Frowning slightly, she decided that now would be her only chance to actually talk with her blonde teammate, and current crush. Naruto-kun, she spoke softly, gaining the blonde's attention. Can I talk to you for a moment? Right now, the blonde inquired, raising an eyebrow at the pinkett's sudden meekness. Remaining silent, Sakura led her blonde teammate away from the railing and into one of the adjacent hallways, giving the two a sense of privacy away from prying ears. What did Orochimaru mean when he called you the missing heir of the royal Uzumaki family? She bluntly asked, in a low tone, gazing at the blonde to gauge his reaction. I don't know, he finally replied, feigning ignorance. Maybe he confused me with someone else. Please Naruto-kun, don't lie to me. Sakura pleaded, looking the blonde teen in the eyes. I know there is something going on that you're not telling me. And I know it has something to do with those girls from Barugakure. As she continued to gaze into his cerulean pools, she could see a swirl of emotions raging behind them. The most prominent was fear, though she had no clue as to why Naruto would be afraid of until the realization dawned on her, remembering that the snake Sannin had said something about the Hokage being involved in something of a scandal. He's afraid we will tell the Hokage. She mentally commented. And if the Hokage is involved somehow? Her inner self left the implication hanging. It could put Naruto-kun in danger, as well as those close to him. While we were in the forest, Sakura continued, shaking off her thoughts for the time being. It felt as if you had a connection with them. When they came into the clearing, each of the girls were drawn to you. So what's going on, Naruto-kun? She pressed, earning a sigh from the blonde as he hung his head. I don't know, only to be cut off by the pinkett as she cupped his face with her hands, forcing him to look at her, her eyes full of concern and fear. No lies, Naruto-kun, she whispered, a single tear leaking out of her eye. I promise not to tell anyone, but please, don't lie to me. I can't tell you, he finally answered after a handful of seconds of silence, hanging his head once more as he did not want to see her in pain. At least, not right now. Is it about the Hokage and the girls from Barugakure? Sakura inquired. There is a lot of truth in what Orochimaru said. The blonde replied in a low tone, causing Sakura's eyes to widen in a mixture of shock and fear. Shock, because it meant that the snake Sannin had been correct and that Naruto was the missing Uzumaki heir that Barugakure had been searching for. Of course she had heard about the kidnapping, since it had been the talk of the entire elemental nations for weeks after it had happened until the Hokage had allayed the populace's concerns about the boy. It was also around that time that Naruto had shown up in Konoha. Sakura mentally wanted to slap herself for not realizing it sooner, even if she had to admit that at the time, she had wanted nothing to do with the blonde boy. To think, the entire time the elemental nations was looking for the boy, he was being abused and ostracized in her own village, and even worse, her own Hokage was behind it all. Which led to why she had a sense of fear. She knew if the Hokage caught wind of what was being discussed between them, he would lock Naruto away somewhere. Then there was the fact the girls from Barugakure were here. They were here for Naruto, which could only mean one thing. "You're going to leave, aren't you?" she asked quietly, wiping away a few tears from her cheeks before she smiled and looked up at him. "You don't have to tell me, just be safe, Naruto-kun." Then, she did something the blonde teen was not expecting. Cupping his cheeks, she leaned in and planted her lips onto his with her eyes closed. At first, Naruto didn't know how to react until he felt her tongue probing at his lips, prompting him to allow it entrance and intertwine with his own. On instinct, he held her firmly as their tongues wrestled for dominance over one another. After a few seconds, the two broke apart, allowing Sakura to rest her head on his chest. While she wouldn't really call them an official couple, she was content with this for now. Not to mention, that kiss alone had rendered her inner self completely speechless and had herself seeing stars. "You two should know that Sasuke had won his match." A voice spoke, breaking the two out of their intimate moment, prompting both to look at the source of the voice. Standing in the hallway opening was none other than Kakashi, with his trademark orange book open in his hand. Upon seeing the lazy masked Jonin, Sakura felt her blood run cold. Fearing that he may have overheard her discussion with Naruto. Naruto, however, seemed to have sensed this from her and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, since he only felt Kakashi's chakra signature during the kiss. "Thank you for telling us, Kakashi-sensei." Naruto smiled. Giving a lazy nod, the silver-haired man walked away from his two remaining students, a bit pleased that the two seemed to have finally formed that intimate bond that the Hokage was waiting for. Though, he was still curious as to how the root team had failed to kill the girl while in the Forest of Death. Still, with the bond formed, he would have to report to the Hokage and see where the village leader would go from there. "Don't worry, Sakura-chan, he didn't hear anything," the blonde reaffirmed, earning a sigh of relief from the pinkett. "And I promise, Sakura-chan, I will tell you everything when it's safe. Just not now, I promise." I understand, Naruto-kun." Sakura smiled sadly, knowing that he was going to leave the village to return home. "Just be safe." Naruto smiled lightly before bringing her in for one more kiss before the two of them exited the hallway, just in time to see two names appear on the board, signifying the next match was not going to end well from one of the combatants. Morgiana versus Kiba Inuzuka. "Oh," Naruto whispered, just loud enough that Sakura could hear him, prompting her to look at him in confusion. "What's wrong?" she asked. "This is going to end very badly for Kiba," the blonde stated. "What do you mean?" "Well, from what I know, Kiba tried to flirt with Morgana when they first arrived in the village and made some very remarks to her," Naruto explained, though he didn't want to go into too much detail, since the pinkett had already picked up on the fact that he had a connection with the girls. He was unsure how she would react when she finds out that he is engaged to all of them, especially after what had just transpired between the two of them in the hallway. "Oh," was all Sakura commented with. Attending the academy with the feral boy, the pinkett was vastly familiar with the boy's alpha attitude and how every girl should submit to him. There had been a handful of times that Kiba had spouted the same nonsense to both her and Ino. Which of course led to the feral boy getting beaten down by both girls because of his audacity to claim he was better than their Sasuke-kun. This caused her to mentally cringe, as she recalled just how bad of a fangirl she really was for her raven-haired teammate. "You better tell her something, Kit," Kurama voiced from within the blonde. "She's already picked up that you plan to leave, it won't take much before she pieces together the rest of the puzzle. But I have to say, she is a good candidate for one of your seats, now that she has broken herself of being a fangirl for the Uchiha brat. Of course, this caused Naruto to blush slightly, which did not go unnoticed by his pink-haired companion. Something wrong, Naruto-kun? No, he stammered. Just the fur ball being a pervert. Sakura couldn't help but giggle lightly at this. Who would have thought the mighty Kyuubi would be a pervert? However, she realized something that she was sure her blonde crush had not. While she knew that the boy held the Kyuubi within him, she was unaware that the two of them could converse with one another. You mean Yuen? She left it hanging as she peered at the boy. Kid, you forgot that she doesn't know about our bond. The fox commented, causing Naruto to mentally groan at his mistake. Yeah, he replied, knowing that because he had already slipped up, he couldn't really hide it from her now. It's part of the reason I can sense others around me. Sakura seemed to accept this explanation, as she nodded her head. And, you were right about earlier, Sakura-chan. The blonde sighed, catching her attention once more. I do have a connection with the Barugaker team. At this, Sakura's eyes widened slightly. I can't give any more details now though, I'm sorry. I understand, Naruto-kun. She replied, knowing full well the blonde didn't want to risk himself or others needlessly. He had promised her that he would tell her everything later, and if one thing that hadn't changed in her blonde teammate, was the fact that he never went back on a promise. Soon, a comfortable silence fell between the two as each of them turned their attention to the arena below. Morgiana couldn't be happier with the current events. She had prayed that she would get paired up against this arrogant asshole, and Kami had answered her prayers. Now, she would make this mutt pay for his disparaging remarks against her and her beloved. This is going to be great, Akamaru. Kiba commented arrogantly, with the boy's canine companion agreeing with his partner with a small yip. After this, you will recognize me as your alpha and you will willingly submit to me. I see you still care little for any loyalty or commitment that is not towards yourself. The pink-haired girl stated calmly. Now, to the random spectator, her tone would be normal for someone that is merely brushing off an insult. But for Naruto and the other girls from Barugaker, Morgiana's calm and collected tone only promised one thing, destruction. PFF'd. Like I would care about your loser fiancé. The feral boy scoffed. And after we're done here, you won't either. You'll be too busy screaming out my name. A cold silence hung over the stadium. Hayate could only gulp as he quickly started the match and immediately cleared out of the way faster they had previously. Just in time too, as Morgiana had disappeared from her spot in a flash, connecting her fist with the feral boy's jaw, sending him skidding across the ground a good 2 or 3 meters. You bitch! Kiba exclaimed as he jumped up, wiping the blood from his lip. Akamaru growling in a threatening manner as the pup ran towards his partner. Stand back Akamaru, I'm going to put this bitch in her place, beneath me. Shikyaku no jutsu, the feral boy exclaimed, dropping down to all fours as his body begun to take on more feral-like features. Namely his fingernails extending to appear more claw-like, as well as his canines lengthening. With blinding speed, the feral boy shot off from his crouched position, aiming to deliver a devastating blow to the pink-haired young woman who had dared to question his alpha status and refused to submit to him. Pulling his fist back, he aimed for her sternum, intending to knock the wind out her and leave her vulnerable. However, the moment his fist was about to connect, she disappeared from his sight, causing him to freeze and look around as to where she could have gone to. His answer came in the form of a sharp blow from the right side that sent him sprawling across the arena floor a second time, until he came to an abrupt stop courtesy of the thick wall that surrounded the arena. Once again, Akamaru came to his side, whimpering in concern at the condition his partner was in. You call yourself an alpha, but you're all bark and no bite. Morgiana scoffed as she began to stalk towards her fallen opponent. You're about as threatening as a domesticated house bitch begging for treats. Many in the stands couldn't help but snicker at the Baru Kunoichi's insult to the feral boy. Tell me, are you housebroken? She smirked. Can you do tricks? You bitch. Kiba screamed as he struggled to stand up. Reaching into his pouch he pulled out 2 pills, giving one to Akamaru. Let's go Akamaru and put this bitch in her place. Jujin Bunshin. Kiba shouted out, causing a plume of smoke to erupt around their forms. Once cleared, 2 Kibas could be seen, one on top of the other in an aggressive stance. Both could be seen sporting a feral grin, no doubt attempting to intimidate the Barugaker girl. Try this on for size. One of them yelled out, though both mouths moved simultaneously. Gatsuga. At this, both Kibas spiraled towards the girl, aiming to deliver a series of blows from all angles. However, Morgiana countered with her own technique, as her leapt towards the 2 spinning cyclones that were barreling down on her and twisted her body in the opposite direction. A loud crack sounding as the 2 techniques collided, though it was obvious that the Barugaker Kunoichi had overpowered the Inuzuka's technique as both Akamaru and Kiba were tossed violently in opposite directions. The young pup having the misfortune of being slammed against the wall, rendering him unconscious, thus breaking the hinge that was over him, whilst Kiba was sent sprawling across the arena floor for a 3rd time in the past 5 minutes. I got a trick I want you to do, mutt. Morgiana grinned as the boy once more struggled to get to his feet. Blood running down his face, forcing one of his eyes to remain shut to prevent the crimson fluid from leaking into it. Sit boy, she shouted as she leapt into the air and brought a powerful blow down on the back of the poor boy's head, sending him face first into the ground, creating a 6-foot-wide crater from the force of the impact. To everyone watching, it was clear that Kiba was not getting up this time. Seeing this, Hayate slid down into the crater and checked the boy's vitals, finding him still breathing. Letting out a sigh of relief, he signaled for the medics on standby to come and treat the boy and his partner. Winner of this match, Morgiana of Barugaker. The sickly proctor announced, earning a small round of applause from the spectators, though mainly from her teammates. With Naruto. Good job Morgiana Heim. Naruto mentally congratulated his pink-haired fiancé with a small smile. That looked brutal, Sakura commented, having seen the girl manhandle the poor feral boy. If she was honest with herself, she felt as if the girl had been holding back the entire time. It did. The blonde Jinchuriki agreed. I always knew Kiba's mouth was going to get him into trouble one day. I only hope he learned from this experience. Who do you think will fight next? The Pinkett inquired. However, before Naruto could answer her, the scoreboard sounded off once more, prompting the 2 to look up and read the names of the next 2 competitors. Naruto Uzumaki vs. Omoi. Additional author's notes. And cliffhanger. Please don't kill me. Sorry, but I kind of wanted to leave this a cliffhanger, mostly so when I start the next chapter, I can jump right into the action. Also, we'll get to see how the girls from Barugaker will react, as well as how Mabui, since she is well aware that Omoi is jealous that she keeps rejecting him for Naruto. That being said, I hope everyone enjoyed this chapter. I know the fight between Kiba and Morgiana was one-sided, and that was on purpose. It's already been stated that the girls are already Jonin's strength, due to their rigorous training to get Naruto back. Also hope that everyone enjoyed the little fluff moment between Sakura and Naruto. I was debating on whether or not I should have him divulge everything just yet, but opted not to. Though I did decide to have Sakura figure it out a little, since I like to portray her as smart, especially once she breaks away from her fangirl attitude.